Many of you are probably already feeling the impacts of inflation, escalating gas prices, but now we have to worry about escalating food shortages. Since the start of the pandemic, we have seen a shortage of certain supplies and prices going up. And now we're barely out of the pandemic and we have a war breaking out. This is causing very serious problems around the world, notably a fertilizer shortage. You combine that with escalating gas prices and the prospect of international war, and it seems like things just keep getting worse. Now, I don't want to come here every day and tell you the apocalypse is upon us, but there are bad things. And perhaps the real issue is that every day it's just another grain of sand of something bad happening. As much as it may suck to hear all this stuff, at the very least, I hope you're informed about what may be coming. Because across the board, we are receiving warnings of a global food crisis, global food shortages. China is now preparing for a food shortage. Billionaires are warning, prepare now. Prices will be going up, and it will become harder for you to find what you need. But it's not just food shortages. It's shortages across the board of basically everything. Channel, but I am going to give a shout out to safeandreadymeals.com. Full disclosure, this is a sponsor spot. This does help support my work, but I am only promoting it now because I genuinely believe you need to understand what's going on. Texas, as I showed you, the stores have no food. There's no guarantees, okay? But go to safeandreadymeals.com. You'll get an excellent deal off of these food storage bins. They last up to 25 years. You put them in storage, you forget about them. You don't buy these things because the world is ending. You buy them because right now in Texas, a winter storm has shut down roads. It has disrupted the supply chain. And now people are going to the store and they can't find the goods they normally need. I'm not implying everyone's going to starve to death, but even with COVID, potential food inflation, there have been shortages and you need to have something to keep you safe in the event that it rains.
InfoWars.
So Tim Pool is selling doomsday prepper buckets now.
How many videos have I made where I said you seriously need to consider taking care of yourself and never let anyone shame you into not preparing for some kind of, disaster?
I have to say, it could not be more obvious that Tim is ashamed of this.
Oh, come on. What's ashamed in selling dehydrated apocalypse food that's 90% starch and literally has 5 times the recommended daily dose of sodium?
Well, first of all that, but I've also tried this stuff. It is bad. I mean, for a second, I thought someone had kicked my asshole into my taste buds.
No way, that stuff is delicious. I mean, Jim Baker can't get enough of it.
I'm going to eat some more of this if you're not careful. Hey. Oh, good. Oh, my God.
Yeah, throwing up in your own mouth is definitely a sign that something's really tasty.
Okay, well, I think that there are a few other indicators that he's ashamed of this.
With regard to food shortages, yes, we did talk about food shortages. And it's going to be real. The price of these sanctions is not just imposed upon Russia. It's imposed upon an awful lot of countries as well, including European countries and our country as well.
Voy a la playa, ya subió la marea.
Nothing more to report. With regard to food shortages, yes, we did talk about food shortages. And it's going to be real. The price of these sanctions is not just imposed upon Russia. It's imposed upon an awful lot of countries as well, including European countries and our country as well.
Testing, testing. All right, you should be able to hear me now, right, guys? Yeah, it's terrible when you have to update all your drivers right as you're starting the show. So, let me know if you hear this now, guys. If you hear this, put yes in the chat. Alrighty. So, now that we've gotten finally all the drivers updated, Jesus Christ. You know when you have the Streamlabs and they make you update, you have to then update the video. Then it decides, nope, now we're gonna break your audio driver. You're gonna have to update that too on the fly. And by the way, you're gonna have to adjust all your settings on the fly as you go. So let's assume that you guys did you hear the audio at least from the videos? Yeah. They were boobering it up. No, just curious if you guys got the sound from the videos at least that I was playing. Alrighty, so the point I was making was that here we had the look of Tim Pool as Joe Biden read that announcement. The old Herman Cain, remember the Herman Cain creepy smile ad? Yeah, that was the Tim Pool smile as you cut away to the compound over there, the skater compound. And I was pointing out that, as we look at the Breitbart ad, here, White House warns of global food shortages after Ukraine invasion. That, bread tubers, leftists, even guys on the right been shaming Tim Pool, calling him a doomer, a grifter. And I'm just thinking, gee, what's Tim Pool going to talk about on his show at 8 o'clock tonight? I wonder what subject. So I'm definitely going to be there playing the Tim Pool drinking game, as he refers to the emergency food buckets. Oh my God! 1 year, guys. It's only been 1 year, and we're already got Biden, Breadline's Biden. The White House confirmed Monday they expect certain parts of the world to suffer a food shortage as an effect of Russian President Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine. We do anticipate that higher energy, fertilizer, wheat, and corn prices. Now, let's just stop right there, guys. Fertilizer just goes into, is a component of just about everything that's grown. Okay, so if you're, whatever you're eating, if it grows out of the ground, odds are that the people that grow it are using fertilizer. And when they add on top of that wheat and corn, what is it that you eat? That doesn't include wheat and corn as a basic component. This is, think about this. Fertilizer, wheat, and corn prices could impact the price of growing and purchasing critical food supplies for countries around the world. So there's no escaping this. No crossing an international border there's haves and have-nots. Because even if they have, the price is going to be out of this world. She said food shortages were not expected to hit the United States, but rather countries in Africa, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia. That's not very helpful, is it? Because when there's food shortages in those places, where do you think those people are going to run? you think you've seen the convoys and the hordes hitting the borders before. Wait until there's no food in these places, and then you're going to see some migration. Then you're going to hear what's the biblical wars and rumors of wars. Reports have pointed out that both Ukraine and Russia produce a significant portion of the world's wheat, corn, and barley, as well as energy and fertilizer. Despite Saki's assurance that the United States would not suffer, the cost of the fertilizer, the grain, and the fuel could have a significant impact on food prices. You don't say. What's another? Here's the New York Times, also vindicating Tim Pool. Ukraine war threatens to cause a global food crisis. Is there another planet that I don't know about? Because if Tim's been on this bandwagon for 2 years, and it only took 2 years for his doomsday scenario to come through, we're gonna have to start listening to the Nostradamus of West Virginia, or wherever the compound is located, somewhere over there in the Appalachians. But the war in Ukraine has delivered a shock to global energy markets. Now the planet, not some little region in the United States, the planet is facing a deeper crisis. A shortage of food. A crucial portion of the world's wheat, corn, and barley is trapped in Russia and Ukraine because of the war. Ukrainian farmers are too busy towing Russian tanks right now to tend to the planting of the food for the summer. Got a super chat here from the Geth. I'm about to start training for a commercial driver's license. Am I walking into a carrier of being robbed left and right? Yeah, you know what you're walking into right now? I think this is what you're training for as you get your CDL license. If you're a CDN license, this is probably what you're gonna be moving into as they subject us to a Liberty Mutual ad. Surprised they didn't give us Liberty Bibbity. Mike's Hard Lemonade. And before you ask, yes, there is an ad blocker, but let's look forward to that for you potential truckers out there. Let's see. The result is that global food and fertilizer prices are soaring. Since the invasion last month, wheat prices have increased by 21%, barley by 33%, some fertilizers by 40%. The upheaval is compounded by major challenges that were already increasing prices and squeezing supply, including the pandemic, shipping constraints, high energy costs, recent droughts, floods, and fires. 1 year, guys. 1 year. 1+ years. Biden took over on January 20th, right? Of 2021. We're now in March, was it March 24th? So a year and 2 months. A year and 2 months, and this is what we're facing. Now economists, aid organizations, and government officials are warning of the repercussions, an increase in world hunger. The looming, and this is the New York Times word, guys, the looming disaster is laying bare the consequences of a major war in the modern era of globalization. Sounds like that globalization idea isn't such a great idea. If every time there's a war in one part of the world, the rest of the world starves. Maybe there should be more local production of important things like, I don't know, food. It's kind of hard for people to live without food, I think. Just me. Just one downside to that just-in-time globalist Klaus Schwab, the World Economic Forum, Great Reset economy. What say you, chat? About the outsourcing of food production so that we have to depend on this very fragile network of interconnectedness. Let's see what the post-millennial says here. Biden says food shortages are going to be real. President Joe Biden held this was a humdinger of a press conference, guys. He's scratching his head. He holds this bullshit press conference, makes an announcement like that. By the way, could you imagine? Here's the leader of the free world, so-called. And he announces something like a global food shortage, and then he takes scripted questions, and he just openly admits he's reading from a list of approved questioners, and then gets out of Dodge. Won't take unscripted questions. Listen to this disaster.
With regard to food shortage, yes, we did talk about food shortages. And it's going to be real. The price of these sanctions is not just imposed upon Russia. It's imposed upon an awful lot of countries as well, including European countries and our country as well. And because both Russia and Ukraine have been the breadbasket of Europe in terms of wheat, for example, just to give you one example. But we had a long discussion in the G7 with both the United States, which has a significant, the third largest.
All right, so let's keep in mind as I pause this a second. He's just made an announcement that there's going to be a global food shortage. You think these reporters want to ask him some questions? For once, this actually sounds more important. Not something you want to sit back and be passive about. I think we're going to see reporters who want more information.
Largest producer of wheat in the world, as well as Canada, which is also a major producer. And we both talked about how we could increase and disseminate more rapidly food shortages. In addition to that, we talked about urging all the European countries and everyone else to end trade restrictions on sending limitations on sending food abroad. And so we are in the process of working out with our European friends what it would take to help alleviate the concerns relative to food shortages. We also talked about a significant major U.S. investment, among others, in terms of providing for the need for humanitarian assistance, including food, as we move forward.
All right, so he reads that. And that was his statement, and then he just didn't take a lot of questions after that. I think one of these here has the question section. Let me see if I could find that bit. Is this still playing? Jesus. All right, so there's Biden telling you that food shortages are coming. Actually, let me see if Drew Hernandez has a... Maybe he has the question section. No, he doesn't have the question section. Let's try the Biden food shortage. Biden with regard to food shortage, it's going to be real. Here's this is the RNC posting an L here. Biden saying just not even 2 years ago that we don't have a food shortage problem.
With regard to food shortage, yes, we did talk about food shortages, and it's going to be real.
We don't have a food shortage problem. We have a leadership problem.
I agree. So if in 2020, if there's a food shortage problem, it's the leader's fault. I agree with Biden on that. Oh, this is priceless. It doesn't look like anybody posted the questions up. The question time. You just keep posting his statement about the food shortage. In any event, I mean, the bottom line is having a little fun at Tim Pool's expense. I always thought it was a little disingenuous to drag the guy because, you know, he never tried to trick anybody with the selling of his food, these food buckets. He from the start, literally from the first day he ever started, shilling this stuff, he made it clear that he had a financial relationship with this company and that if you bought it through him, that he got a piece. So, you know, if you want to call him a shill or a grifter on that respect, I mean, if the guy's upfront and honest with you and saying that he does benefit if you purchase the product, and then he goes on to describe I mean, I never had a problem with that, so I don't know where the grifter angle came from. And generally, when Tim says what people call the doomer stuff, the Civil War shit, and the predictions of war in Ukraine and all that, well, let's be honest, hasn't most of it come true? And I mean, obviously there's no Civil War, but I don't know, man. The way things are looking, I mean, we get closer and closer to conflict every day. We're gonna think I have a story a little bit later, even involving Antifa. That's they may have bitten off a little more than they could chew up there in Portland or Seattle, wherever that story is based. But we'll get to it soon. But it wasn't Biden who went out there today and made an absolute ass of himself. It was this was weird. Obviously, all the world leaders are over there in Brussels. They're I guess what is this? Is this like a G20 meeting or something of that? They're all there talking about the war in Ukraine. And here goes Trudeau. I guess he went and thought he was going to take a victory lap, making this speech at the European Parliament. And in this bizarre speech, you know, given the what's going on in the world right now, he made this speech about himself and his handling of the Canadian trucker convoy protest, if you could believe it. So here's Trudeau. I guess he thought he was going to go over there and just get congratulated and and get universal praise for being such a wonderful leader. But here he is.
These are anxious times, and people are looking for leadership and solutions. Unfortunately, we're seeing a rise in cynical populists who are trying to exploit these anxieties. They pretend to have easy solutions that play on people's fears. Even in Canada, where 90% of people are vaccinated, and our motto as a country is peace, order, and good government, we saw anti-vaccine and anti-government protests devolve into illegal occupations of our communities and blockades of our borders. The leaders of those convoys were effective in turning citizens with real anxieties against the system best suited to allay those concerns.
Can somebody tell me why Justin Trudeau crossed the Atlantic Ocean to speak to the European Parliament about the Canadian trucker convoy? I mean, seriously? First of all, yeah, before I go on, to get the reactions to this speech, somebody needs to explain to me why the European Parliament will give two fucks about the Canadian trucker. That was a Canadian domestic event that had nothing, that didn't really, doesn't affect Europe. And with the Russo-Ukrainian war, which is essentially what they're there to talk about now, why is he talking about this? So, I guess he got a sort of reaction that he wasn't expecting. Because he was not universally welcomed there at the European Parliament. Here's just a couple of the reactions, and they were not good.
Poštovane kolege, dragi građani, premijeru Trudeau. Sloboda, pravo izbora, pravo na život i zdravlje, pravo na rad za mnoge od nas, to su temeljna ljudska prava za koje su milioni građana Europe i svijeta položili svoje živote. Za obranu naših prava i prava naše djece, koje smo stjecali stoljećima, mnogi od nas, uključujući i mene, spremni smo riskirati vlastitu slobodu i položiti vlastite živote. Nažalost, danas su među nama i oni koji gaze te temeljne vrijednosti. Kanada, nekada simbol...
Whoa! Call it out right there. He's talking about Canada. He's not mincing his words. And he turned around to look at Justin Trudeau.
Modernog svijeta je pod vodstvom vaše kvazi-liberalne čizme proteklih mjeseci postala simbol kršenja temeljnih ljudskih prava i građanskih sloboda. Gledali smo kako konjima gaze.
We watched how you trample women with horses. He's calling them out for Tramplegate. Remember the old grandma that that Trudeau's cavalry thugs ran over with the horse. Yeah, this based European Parliament member letting them know we saw that.
Žene, kako samohranim roditeljima blokirate bankovne račune da ne mogu platiti djeci školovanje, da ne mogu platiti lijekove, da ne mogu platiti račune za struju i vodu, da ne mogu platiti rate kredita za svoje domove. Za vas su to možda liberalne metode. Međutim, za mnoge građane svijeta to je diktatura najgore vrste.
Diktatura! Dictatorship of the worst kind.
Budite uvjereni da građani svijeta, udruženi, mogu zaustaviti svaki režim koji želi uništiti slobodu građana, bilo bombama, bilo štetnim farmaceutskim proizvodima. Hvala.
All right, so I don't know. Should I replay that muted and read it for those of you who are listening? I'll do that. We'll figure out who this guy is. Dear colleagues, dear citizens, Prime Minister Trudeau, freedom, the right to choose, the right to life, the right to health, the right to work, for many of us, are fundamental human rights, for which millions of citizens of Europe and the world have laid down their lives, to defend our rights and the rights of our children, which we have acquired over the centuries. Many of us, including myself, are willing to risk our own freedom and our own lives. Unfortunately, today there are those among us who trample on these fundamental values. Canada, once a symbol of the modern world, has become a symbol of civil rights violations under your quasi-liberal boot in recent months. We watched how you trample women with horses, how you block the bank accounts of single parents so that they can't even pay their children's education and medicine, that they can't pay utilities, mortgages for their homes. To you, these may be liberal methods. For many citizens of the world, it is a dictatorship of the worst kind. Rest assured, hold on, I missed that part. Rest assured that the citizens of the world united can stop any regime that wants to destroy the freedom of citizens, either by bombs or harmful pharmaceutical products. I guess he means the jab. Thank you. So this, let's see if we can figure out who this fella is. This is Mislav Kolakusic, member of European Parliament, former judge, non-affiliated activist for the rule of law, and fighter against corruption. He has, I don't know what flag that is. This is the flag of Croatia, so he's Croatian. So a Croatian MEP. As if that wasn't bad enough, that scathing rebuke. This woman that came up, I guess this is member of European Parliament Christine Anderson, and then she ripped Trudeau a new asshole.
Thank you. Based on Article 195. Out that it would have been more appropriate for Mr. Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, to address this House according to Article 144, an article which was specifically designed to debate violations of human rights, democracy and the rule of law, which is clearly the case with Mr. Trudeau. Then again, a Prime Minister who openly admires the Chinese basic dictatorship, who tramples on fundamental rights by persecuting and criminalizing his own citizens as terrorists just because they dared to stand up to his perverted concept of democracy, should not be allowed to speak in this House at all. Mr. Trudeau, you are a disgrace for any democracy. Please spare us your presence. Thank you.
Wow. So Justin Trudeau going abroad, humiliating Canada once again. Just remember that, was it a trip a couple of years ago when he went to India and decided to play dress up? Thought he was in a Bollywood wedding movie or something, and just humiliated Canada on the world stage. So he goes abroad, humiliates Canada once again in the European Union. Watch, Trudeau gets called a dictator in front of the entire EU. On March 23rd, this is the this is called the counter signal. Don't know about this this outlet. Keen Bexty. March 23rd, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was called a dictator in front of the entire European Union over his response to the Freedom Convoy. Addressing both the European Parliament and Trudeau, specifically member of the European Parliament Mislav Kolakusic proceeded to deliver Trudeau perhaps the most humiliating international thrashing of his political career. We saw the original, that was the first guy that spoke. Referencing here, remember the poor old lady got trampled with the horses. Never found out what happened to the guy in the brown jacket. He got trampled too. This is, remember, Trudeau was, he should have expected this reaction, because this was back in February, where this Romanian member of Parliament, this Christian Terhes, he actually was one of the first European members of Parliament to tear Trudeau up. So I don't know how he thought he was going to go over there and be greeted as a hero. Here's MEP Christian Terhes, I believe he's Romanian, from on February.
And with the Prime Minister of Canada, the way he's behaving right now, he's exactly like a tyrant, like a dictator. He's like Ceausescu in Romania. If even you doubt If you raise doubts about the vaccines, you're outcasted. What's the difference between what he does and what happened under the Inquisition? See, on one side they say, well, we should not believe in God, but on the other side they say, believe in science. We don't have to. Science is not about belief. Science is about measurements, conclusions, hypotheses, and arguments. We got to a point right now where even if you say something, if you raise any doubts, you're already considered, as whatever, they label you in very different ways. This is not okay. And I have to tell you, that when I saw the protests in Canada, the way the truckers over there reacted, I got in touch with some of them, others contacted me. I congratulated them, and I want to use this opportunity to thank them. And I hope this movement for freedom and for rights is spreading all around the world. Because at the end of the day, we have to make sure that all these elected officials, they understand that they were elected in those offices to work for the people, not to behave like masters of slaves. Thank you.
Annie, I'll just...
All right, so he had to figure he was going to get a bad reaction. I mean, look at it. He even got protested in London when he showed up a few weeks ago. This is March 7th in London. So, I mean, his European victory lap was only going to happen in his mind. Here's just a story where, I guess, with people don't trust money anymore. So this story kind of just jumped out at me. The headline: Ukrainian refugee flees to Poland with $2,000 in Bitcoin on a USB drive. Now, it used to be back in the day when you were a refugee and you went from country to country. Normally, you used to stockpile gold. Maybe some gold ingots, some gold coins. Something so that you could bribe the border guards, to let you through. Get some food when you get there, and some shelter perhaps. But now you got, this is in the digital age in 2022, I guess instead of gold, you put some Bitcoin on a USB. And think about it. If it's actually pretty smart. Most thieves, if let's say you get held up by bandits, and they pat you down and look to steal shit from you, most of them are going to overlook just a USB drive. Even if they find it, you could hide it anywhere. You can even buy USB sticks that are like disguised as common items. So actually, I was thinking about it. I was like, this is pretty smart actually, because you could even hide USB sticks and say false heels in a shoe, shit like that. So that's I thought that's pretty interesting. I never thought about using Bitcoin in that manner. So I said in some respects it's probably more useful than gold in that respect, because also think about it, it's pretty much redeemable in almost any country that you would go to, as long as it's not like a shithole country, as long as the country you're going to has like internet connections and stuff like that, and some basic banking system. So think about that. I actually hadn't considered that before. So another possible use for Bitcoin. But this was interesting. Nothing here about what you would normally think about a story about the biolabs in Ukraine. But I actually did find an interesting angle. Well, I didn't find it personally. This is the National Pulse. This is Raheem Kassam's outfit. Raheem Kassam, does he still do that podcast with Steve Bannon, The War Room? I know he used to be on there. I'm pretty sure he still does it. I don't think they've had any falling out or anything like that. But here are Raheem Kassam and who's the other person on the byline with him? Natalie Winters. They found that Hunter actually has a financial interest in a bio firm that has contracts with the U.S. government to service a lot of these, some of these biolabs in Ukraine. So while I haven't found anything with regard to any nefarious things going on in terms of, any pathogens, there certainly seems to be a lot of conflicts of interests now with the Bidens with regard to Ukraine, because now we know he already had the Burisma angle. I didn't realize that he, through his company, was it Seneca Partners, had a financial stake in this. What is this company that they invested in? This is a Metabiota, an ostensibly a San Francisco-based company that purports to detect, track, and analyze emerging infectious diseases. This is starting to sound shady to me, because it just looks like to me this is like a cash grab, where it's just like Biden used to do with his brother. Something would be going on in the world. Biden would be handed the portfolio for that thing, and then all of a sudden his brother would get a bunch of these contracts where he wouldn't have to actually do much and just collect money from the government. This to me looks like one of those situations, because it's not even clear to me what Metabiota is being paid for here. It just looks like they're being given money, a lot of money, to do nothing. Financial reports reveal that RSTP led the company's first round of funding in 2015, which amounted to $30 million. So they raised $30 million in this funding round in 2015. So that was 7 years ago for the Metabiota company. The former managing director and co-founder of RSTP, Neil Callahan, a name that also appears many times on Hunter Biden's hard drive. Remember the laptop? It's now been legitimized, guys. It's now been legitimized. So all of this is connects to Hunter and the big guy. Remember, 10% for the big guy. Sits on Metabiota's board of advisors alongside former Clinton official Rob Walker. Remember, Tony Bobulinski mentioned Rob Walker. He was the guy that initially contacted Tony Bobulinski to put him in touch with Hunter Biden when he wanted to make him the CEO of that company they were going to use to do their business with the Chinese Communist Party. So former Clinton official Rob Walker, who discussed in another unearthed Hunter Biden hard drive email, reaching out to the Obama Department of Defense with regard to Metabiota. So this is already shady. You've got them using Hunter's contacts. Now they're lobbying the Department of Defense on behalf of this Metabiota company, which him, Devin Archer, and Hunter Biden and John Kerry's son have an interest in. Let's see here. I'm going to have a quote-unquote friend. It's always a friend. Reach out to Department of Defense on the down low. See, it's always these secret backroom deals. A friend is going to reach out. These guys, it's just so much corruption and nepotism going on in the swamp. Is there anyone we can call in D.C. to get a sense of how legit Metabiota is viewed within the various government agencies? So look at this. If you have to ask your business partners if the company you've invested in is how legit it's viewed, you're already implying that your guys are running basically a scheme. I'm starting to think that this is like a piggy bank for Hunter's outfit. What was it? Rosemont Seneca. I want to get a sense of how legit Metabiota is viewed within the various government agencies. We want to make sure we thoroughly do our diligence here, especially as Goldman and now Morgan Stanley will be doing diligence on the fund and Metabiota towards investing in both. So they got Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley sniffing around. Additionally, we have introduced them to do in DC. Who have we introduced them to in DC? Can you please provide a list of the various folks within Cornerstone as well as outside the firm where we've made intros? This data will go into our investment memo, which we are trying to complete and get to potential LPs, is that limited partners, by Tuesday. Will and I met with Nathan on Tuesday, and he said they plan to retain Cornerstone, by the way, which is great news, so they have come around on that front. We are meeting again with them today and tomorrow to discuss the terms of the Series A. That would be the Series A financing, the $30 million, I believe. Thanks for the help and input, Best John, and that's John Deloche, co-founder and managing director of Rosemont Seneca Technology Partners. That was Hunter Biden's investment firm, quote unquote. In July 2021, National Pulse exclusively revealed the connection between Metabiota, Hunter Biden, and I'm sure many of you have heard of this company, the pandemic-linked Eco Health Alliance of Dr. Fauci fame. with working with the Chinese lab in Wuhan, which worked closely with Anthony Fauci's National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Disease, NIAID, and the notorious Wuhan laboratory, as I just mentioned. Today, we can exclusively reveal an official connection between a Biden-linked pandemic firm and a biological laboratories based in Ukraine. In early March, we revealed how these labs were handling, quote, especially dangerous pathogens through programs funded by the U.S. government. The potential for such entities to fall into the hands of invading Russian forces has come under hotly disputed scrutiny in recent weeks. So here's where it looks like the scam comes in. Zoonotic diseases. So a feature in the Science and Technology Center in Ukraine's STCU 2016 annual report recounts a trilateral meeting with Ukraine, Poland, and the United States regional collaboration on biological security, safety, and surveillance. So you got to understand, Hunter Biden, he has the inside track on all this shit. He has his friends in Washington. They have, they know this stuff is going to go on. They know they're going to put out contracts for this stuff. So they make sure that the company that they have a financial interest is going to get these contracts. The article describes in particular an October 2016 meeting involving U.S. military officials and their Ukrainian counterparts discussing cooperation in surveillance and prevention of especially dangerous infection diseases, including zoonotic diseases in Ukraine and neighboring countries. So here you got the people in attendance. Also in attendance are representatives from the Biden-linked MetaBiota, roughly 1 year after Hunter's investment funds put cash into the company. So how did Hunter's company that he just invested in the year prior through his company, how did they get invited to this meeting? I don't understand. If one of you guys, if you guys are listening to me right now in the chat, if you and I started a company, I'm thinking that we wouldn't be invited to meetings happening in Ukraine or Poland between the U.S. Department of Defense and the militaries of those countries regarding contracts for mitigating zoonotic diseases. So how is it that the Hunter always gets these breaks? The meeting focused on existing frameworks, regulatory coordination, ongoing cooperative projects in research, surveillance, and diagnostics of a number of dangerous zoonotic diseases, such as avian influenza, leptospirosis, Crimea Congo hemorrhagic fever, and brucellosis. So, this run-of-the-mill stuff, a lot of this is mostly farm animal diseases that you get for being in contact with farm animals. A separate page from the STCU website details another meeting between MetaBiota representatives, Ukrainian scientists, and the U.S. Department of Defense officials aimed at increasing collaboration while attending a swine fever workshop just months later. So a lot of this is just boring kind of stuff, but you know what this means in the end? It sounds boring, but if they're going to put out contracts worth millions of dollars that you're just going to collect just to quote-unquote coordinate this shit, come on, man. This stinks to high heaven. But Hunter Biden doesn't know the first thing about infectious zoonotic diseases, just like he doesn't know the first thing about the oil and gas industry. It's certainly not the oil and gas industry in Ukraine. Just like Hunter Biden, this freaking crackhead that got thrown out the military for smoking crack, and suddenly the Chinese Communist Party, of all the people, they've never picked anyone in the United States to invest with before. They pick Hunter Biden, the known crackhead, to just hand over millions of dollars to. So in the framework of the workshop, special breakout meetings of Ukrainian scientists and their European and American counterparts, jointly organized, Ditra and so MetaBiota. Why did they get this invite? I don't understand. Government contracts, and here's the key, guys, government contracts also corroborate the working relationship between MetaBiota, Ukrainian laboratories, U.S. Department of Defense, with the firm receiving an $18.4 million grant from the U.S. agency in 2014. Who was the vice president of the United States in 2014? A total of $307,091 allocated to MetaBiota on September 25th was itemized for Ukraine research projects. So it just sounds like this is like a piggy bank, man. Government contracts, here's your cut, boom, boom, we'll chop it up, you figure out 10% for the big guy, right? Several scientific papers, including those isolating strains of deadly pathogens like the virulent African swine fever virus, appear to have been published following the grant. A 2019 paper titled Complete Genome Sequence of a Virulent African Swine Fever Virus from a Domestic Pig in Ukraine was authored by researchers from Metabiota and 3 UK. So this is like a front. Put out a paper and we'll give you $300,000. Boom. The researchers whose work is described as being funded by the U.S. Defense Threat Reduction Agency, DTRA, through the Biological Threat Reduction Program in Ukraine, isolated the strain of the deadly virus using a pig from Ukraine. So, here, does this sound shady to you? Here's a pig. We're gonna isolate the genome of this swine fever, and you can write the paper, and here's your money. They do this again with another one called Further, a 2014 paper called Spatiotemporal Patterns of Livestock Anthrax in Ukraine during the past century, 1913 to 2012. So now they're writing a historical paper about anthrax in livestock in Ukraine from the last century. Listen, author named Artem Skripnik, then affiliated with a Ukraine-based branch of the pandemic firm. So what they're getting money basically for this Artem Skripnik's work on 100-year-old anthrax, livestock anthrax. Our primary objective was to examine the spatiotemporal dynamics of the disease and identify areas where anthrax may persist in the present day. It's in the dirt. Anthrax is everywhere. If you went in your backyard and scooped up a handful of dirt, you'd actually find anthrax in it. So I'm guessing Ukraine is no different. It's probably all over the dirt there. Examining the historical epizootiology of a disease can identify the geographic extent of environmental foci, define areas prone to repeat outbreaks, and lead to a better understanding of natural disease cycles. Skripnik is also listed as a metabiota scientist in other papers, including Dynamics of Anthrax Cases in Ukraine during 1970 to 2013, Anthrax in Dogs, and Serological Anthrax Surveillance in Wild Boar, Suskrofa, in Ukraine. One paper aimed to better understand anthrax epizootiology in Ukraine, collecting samples. I mean, this is the same shit that the scientists do here. Why is Hunter Biden getting money for routine zoological pathogen research in Ukraine? This is bullshit. This is a money collection scheme. Skripnik, the Metabiota affiliated researcher, worked as a veterinary project coordinator for the Biden-linked firm before moving on to serve in his current role, technical officer for laboratories of the World Health Organization. Two other researchers, Natalia Mikalovska and Bradford Raymond Brooks, are listed as Ukraine-based metabiota researchers in a paper titled Implementation of a Regional Training Program on African Swine Fever as part of the Cooperative Biological Engagement Program across the Caucasus region. A lot of words describing just, again, more boring work that I guarantee you Hunter Biden knows nothing about. So the company's international footprint includes operations in 20 countries, offices in San Francisco, Washington, Ukraine, China, Canada, Sierra Leone, explains the summary. LinkedIn profiles of former Metabiota employees detail the work conducted by the company's Kyiv outpost. Former country science manager for Eastern Europe, David Mustra, explains how he managed Metabiota's team of 12 Ukrainian national personnel, served as the biosurveillance and research manager for Metabiota's work as a subcontractor, under the direction of prime contractor Black & Veatch, B&V, on the Defense Threat Reduction Agency's DTRA Cooperative Biological. It's again, when you trace this, it's just a word salad that you got to climb through, and layers and layers and layers of contractors, primary contractors, secondary subcontractors, tertiary subcontractors. It goes on and on and on, guys. So it looks to me, if you're gonna look into the angle of labs in Ukraine, I think the real reason that they don't want to talk about it is all the cash that Hunter was raking in indirectly. I mean, it's not like Hunter's flying over there and doing this. He just invested money in Metabiota, and it looks like his job and the job of his friends like Devin Archer and all them is to make sure that Metabiota stays cashed up with government contracts. Seems like they're in all the right meetings. They know all the right people. You know, and they make sure that their company gets these deals. This one's just weird. I'm sure a lot of you sometimes follow the situation with commodity prices and with the stuff going on in Russia and Ukraine. One of the funny markets has been nickel. You know, I guess people didn't realize so much nickel comes out of that part of the world. It's got to the point, I think I saw, and maybe it still is, there was a brief moment in time when a nickel, I'm talking about an actual physical U.S. nickel, 5 cents, where the metal content of the nickel inside it is worth more than the 5 cents of the currency. So if you see a nickel shortage in the near future, realize that maybe it's because people are hoarding nickels for the metal content. But the price of nickel, the headline says it all. Nickel halted limit up again as basically the reason why it's a short squeeze. Remember the GameStop short squeeze? It's the same thing with the commodity nickel. You got some Chinese tycoon out there who's so short on nickel that now that the price has run so high against him, he's got to cover the short, and he's just driving the price so way up again. Nickel halted limit up again as Chinese tycoon begins covering his giant short, sparking fears of another mega squeeze. So for those of you who own nickel, maybe you want to hold on to that. For the second day in a row, nickel traded in London surged by the 15% exchange limit on the scandal-plagued London Metals Exchange, putting the spotlight back on bearish position holders who just 2 weeks since the market was roiled by a historic short squeeze, sparked speculation that a second, even more vicious short squeeze may be forming. Yeah, if that Chinese tycoon, he's still short. I mean, he's got to cover that short. He's got to buy. Nickel futures remained locked at the price limit by late morning on the London Metal Exchange as the latest spike extends a period of unprecedented turmoil for the market. Prices soared over 250% over 2 trading sessions in early March during the short squeeze centered on China's Tsingshan Holding Group company before the market was suspended to avoid bankrupting China's biggest stainless steel producer and potentially leading to billions in losses for its over-the-counter counterparties, among which J.P. Morgan was the largest. As we reported last week, Tsingshan struck a deal with its banks to avoid further margin calls, allowing the market to reopen last week, and said it would reduce its short position in the future. But the sharp 2-day jump will be piling pressure on its banks and brokers who have to make margin calls of their own to cover short positions on the London Metals Exchange when prices rise. So it's like created a ripple effect. Speaking to Bloomberg, Michael Whitmer, head of metals research at Bank of America, said that ultimately the short position is still out there and they will have to close it out, adding that sharp daily price moves are likely to continue at least until the short position is out of the market. And sure enough, in a separate report from Bloomberg today, we learned that Zhang Big Shot Guangda, the owner of Tsingshan, bought some contracts on the London Metal Exchange to reduce his short bet as the nickel market briefly unfroze this week. Tsingshan and its peers have covered tens of thousands of tons. Let me repeat that. Tens of thousands of tons of their short positions. One of the people said, Zhang had short holdings of over 150,000 tons. How the hell do you go short 150,000 tons of nickel? I mean, seriously, where are you going to find 150,000 tons of nickel to cover that short? That's insane. You got some, this is some like Klaus Schwab level scale shit. What did this company want to do? Dominate the world nickel market and crush it? I don't understand. How do you go short 150,000 tons of nickel? Where are you getting at? His business and trading partners also held additional large short positions on top of that. While the move modestly reduces the size of the potential pain for Zhang and his banks as nickel prices soar once again, prices on the London Metal Exchange are more than 30% over the past 2 days, or up more than 30% over the past 2 days. The risk is that now that markets know that the big short is covering, they may refuse to sell any metal at any price, forcing yet another squeeze. Just like the GameStop guys. As long as you hold, they can't buy. And it drives the price up. On March 10th, Bloomberg reported that Zhang told his banks he didn't want to reduce his short position. That clear lie, which removed the possibility of a squeeze, helped send the nickel price sharply lower. Since then, falling as low as $26,675 a ton this week, compared with $48,078 a ton on March 7th, the last price that the London Metal Exchange allowed to stand when it closed the market. Clearly, Zhang was lying. I'm shocked. A Chinese communist lied. Clearly, Zhang was lying, and he's been quietly seeking to cover at least some of his short. The London Metal Exchange reopened the nickel market last week after Tsingshan announced a deal with its banks to avoid further margin calls, and in the meantime followed an unprecedented trading suspension. The London Metal Exchange canceled billions of dollars of transactions, sparking outrage in the industry and destroying overnight any positive reputation the exchange may have had. That's a good picture. This was the London Metal Exchange when it opened again. Look at this chaos. These guys probably try to cover their shorts. look at these guys screaming. All right, so I mean, I don't know what more I could say about it. It's just that looks like nickel's going to be going up, boys. All right, so we're going to have to talk about this Home Depot, Canadian Home Depot. I got to be specific. This is Home Depot in Canada putting out this ridiculous privilege kind of lesson to its employees. Home Depot teaches employees about privilege, says if you don't have to think about it, it's a privilege. Home Depot in Canada has come under fire recently after a training page was posted to Twitter highlighting privilege as it applies to race, religion, and sexuality. Let's see here. The packet posted to Twitter by Libs of TikTok was reportedly from a Home Depot store in Calgary, Alberta. Let's see what this abomination looks like. Leading practices unpacking privilege. Privilege, noun, a special benefit or advantage that may be earned or unearned. Note, a person may or may not be aware that they are benefiting from privilege. Social privilege, white privilege. What privilege looks like? If you're confident that the police exist to protect you, you have white privilege. If while growing up, college was an expectation of you, not a dream, you have class privilege. If you can expect time off from work to celebrate your religious holidays, you have Christian privilege. If you can use public bathrooms without stairs, fear, or anxiety, you have cisgender privilege. If you don't have to worry about how to get into a store, you have able-bodied privilege. If you don't have to explain that your spouse is of the same gender, you have heterosexual privilege. If you don't have to think about it, it's a privilege. And then they make you have to check a box here. Check your privilege, literally. White, male, class, Christian, cisgendered, able-bodied, heterosexual. So, here's your employer basically making you go through a struggle session and then calling you a racist. Racism, prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against a person or people because of their membership of a particular racial or ethnic group, typically one that is a minority or marginalized. Racial prejudice, set of discriminatory or derogatory attitudes based on assumptions coming from perceptions about race and skin color. Power, the authority granted through social structures and conventions, as well as the access to means of communications and resources. This can include authority, privilege, influence, popularity, aggression, threat, etc. So, here's your employer putting you through a struggle session. They even have little comic strips. This is crazy. Directing employees to start talking about white privilege. So you're going to have to go to work and start talking about your white privilege, whether you want to or not. Even if it's uncomfortable, start the conversation. Then they go take you through basically, you have to almost like confess your sins in a struggle session and just concede to the other person's points. They're always right, you're always wrong. I mean, it's just what you need from your employer, forcing you to have conversations you don't want to participate in. But here we have finally somebody struck back. A professor who was, believe it or not, in a university, so you would think he would lose his case, but a federal court ruled in favor of this UNT professor who was fired for criticizing microaggression policy. This guy actually put on a blackboard, "Please don't leave garbage lying around," and then he put this little microaggression paper that they passed out there. When they asked who did it, he came forward, took credit, and he got fired. Well, he sued, saying that he was fired, basically, and that it was an infringement on his freedom of speech. The school tried to have it dismissed, and the court said, nope, his lawsuit can go forward on his First Amendment grounds that he was, he can't be fired over protected political speech, which this definitely is. You're allowed to criticize, policy, which touches on political speech. So going forward, what this heralds is, these companies that think that they can avoid legal liability for having these woke indoctrination struggle sessions imposed on their employees, they might be opening themselves up to some legal liability here. Other thing I'm gonna say, remember in a previous stream I played for you the words of Klaus Schwab, and it's not just Klaus Schwab. It's these big corporations that are connected with the World Economic Forum, and listen to how just authoritarian they're getting. Here's the CEO of BlackRock, the infamous BlackRock Corporation, basically the largest landlord in the world, the company that's buying up all the houses in the United States, essentially. They want to be everybody's landlord. Here's this guy saying, the CEO, Larry Fink, talking about how companies need to exercise control and force behaviors.
Well, behaviors are going to have to change, and this is one thing we're asking companies. You have to force behaviors, and at BlackRock we are forcing behaviors. Well,
Yeah, I want to hear that from the CEO of a business I interact with, where my engagement with his company is going to be them forcing behavior. Listen to that again. We're going to force behaviors. We're trying to convince other companies to force behaviors. What? I mean, these people are talking like feudal lords.
Behaviors are going to have to change, and this is one thing we're asking companies. You have to force behaviors, and at BlackRock we are forcing behaviors.
These people speak, I don't know if they know what they sound like when they talk. I mean, what's next? He's going to demand the right of primonact, first night with your wife? I don't understand. He sounds like one of the feudal lords, like you would see in a Robin Hood story. Was it in Braveheart? He came to demanded the right of first night. Yeah, you're feudal landlords. But hey, here's another one. You know how in New York City we have these mandates that say you can't go to work unless you're vaxxed in certain venues, in public venues. Well, apparently there's been an exemption, you see, because with the Major League Baseball season approaching, technically Major League Baseball players are employees, and the baseball stadiums that here in New York City, Citi Field for the Mets and Yankee Stadium for the Yankees, technically those are workplaces. And lo and behold, the Mets and the Yankees both have several players who are purebloods, so to speak, not vaxxed. And they would not have been able to play home games. Now, that may not be a big deal in football, where there's like maybe 8 or 9 home games a year, depending on the season for you. It's a big deal in baseball. There's 162 games, and half of them you play at home. That's 81 games. And sometimes you may be on a homestand that's like 2 weeks. So you're going to have basically a quarter of your team sitting on the bench for like 2 weeks. That would be unworkable. So obviously these billionaire owners went to the mayor of New York City and said, "Yeah, we're not feeling that, bro." So you would think this would lead to the ending of the requirement, for the vax in the workplaces. But no, what we got instead was just an exemption for quote-unquote performers and actors. So, rules for thee, not for me. If you're a professional a sports athlete, you know, or a Major League Baseball league, or a Major League Sports league, you get you get the special treatment. You don't have to do as the hoi polloi do. But the regular people of the city, nope, got to keep obeying the rules. So that's how it works, guys. It's a big club, and we're not in it. Lo and behold, the city of Boston was surprised to learn that when they abolished the police in their schools, it's a common practice for schools in recent times to have basically an actual cop in the school, to keep the kids safe. But in the time of St. George Floyd, that became a no-no, and you had a lot of people. If they couldn't get the city to abolish the police, a concession that was often made was, okay, we'll just abolish the police in schools. So Boston was one of the cities that decided to do away with cops in schools, and wouldn't you know it, crime in the schools has skyrocketed. Who could have predicted that? In December of 2020, Massachusetts passed its police reform law in response to Black Lives Matter protests and calls to abolish the police. The law would have required school police officers to undergo 350 hours of very expensive, specialized training in order to keep their positions in their school districts. Almost all the schools in the Boston School District chosen to instead cut their cops loose and replace them with school safety specialists who don't carry handcuffs or firearms and who do not have the authority to arrest students, essentially social workers. This left teachers and administrators with no choice other than calling 911 when trouble breaks out. To the great surprise of many of the activists pushing for police reform, but really not to anyone else with an IQ above room temperature, incidents of many sorts of crime in the city's public schools began to rise immediately. That trend continued throughout 2021, and it's still being seen today. Most of the incidents involved fighting and assaults, but there were even instances of guns showing up in schools and sex assaults. Now the city's facing a thorny question as to whether or not to bring the police back to the campuses. With no school-employed officers, it has fallen on regular police. So think about it. A crime happens, they got to call the cops anyway. But it's not better because the cops still have to come, but now they're not on the campus, so you have to wait for them to respond. It's fallen on regular police and the city's school police unit to handle emergencies at schools in the neighborhoods they patrol. Between the first day of school and Thanksgiving break, the most recent 911 call data available from the Boston Public Schools, police responded to 177 incidents at 62 schools across the city. More than 1/4 of the 911 calls were for incidents involving fighting or assault, and these emergency calls represent only the most serious issues. Teachers, deans, and school safety specialists reported more than 4,000 other incidents to school administrators from September through November, which can range from disrupting class to cutting school or trespassing. During the entire 2019-2020 school year, there were 951 recorded incidents where campus police had to intervene. Thus far in the 2021-2022 school year, there have been nearly 800 already, with several months to go. And officials interviewed for this report believe the number is actually much higher because not all incidents wind up being recorded in the school's record-keeping system like they were when campus police had to document everything in the school system. Wow. Can anyone honestly say they are surprised by these results? Public schools, particularly in urban area high schools, always have some number of kids that are going to cause trouble. Gangs regularly recruit high school students and groom them for a life of criminal activity. Those kids will be the most likely to cause trouble, assuming they show up for class at all. When there's an officer hanging around posing the possibility of an armed response at some time in juvenile hall, the bad apples are less likely to act out. When the only responsible adult in the area is a quote-unquote safety specialist with a clipboard and, I guess, a whistle, the incentive to hold back on their poor impulses is greatly diminished. In fact, you're probably putting the safety specialist in danger of becoming another victim. So, not so good results in Boston getting the cops out of the schools. Same energy in Los Angeles, guys. LAPD. Hey, you probably shouldn't wear expensive jewelry anymore in Los Angeles. The Los Angeles Police Department has a message for the denizens of Tinseltown and the rest of the City of Angels. When you go out and about, you should probably avoid wearing any sort of flashy, expensive jewelry or other expensive possessions. Why would they say that? We wouldn't want to inconvenience the criminals by arresting them for the crimes. No, we're going to tell the citizens to change their lifestyles to accommodate the criminals. The thieves have continued to become more and more brazen about pulling weapons on pedestrians and motorists and robbing them of their belongings. Displays of wealth will just make you more of a target for these types of crimes. At the same time, gangs are also stepping up attacks on jewelry stores and other outlets selling expensive and easily fenced merchandise. So you might want to avoid those stores as well. LA is looking more and more like a scene from Escape from New York these days. Los Angeles police are warning people that wearing expensive jewelry in public could make them a target for thieves. A note of caution as robberies are up citywide. The police department suggested Tuesday came as robbers smashed the front window of a Beverly Hills jewelry store in broad daylight and fled with millions of dollars worth of merchandise. Passers-by recorded video of Tuesday's robbery, the latest in a long string of brazen smash and grab thefts and robberies of people wearing expensive watches or jewelry in the LA region. Yeah, in case you missed it, here's thieves just doing brazen multi-million-dollar robberies in the middle of Beverly Hills with no fear of getting caught. As soon as we get through the ad. So imagine, if you're a Hollywood celebrity, you're there in Tinseltown, you can't wear your bling.
Grab robbery. Chris Christie is live in Air 7 HD with the breaking details. Chris?
Ellen, that smash and grab taking place just over an hour ago, looking live at the 200 block of South Beverly Drive, cross street of Charlieville, where there is now a major investigation after that smash and grab robbery at the luxury jewels of Beverly Hills. And just moments ago, we have caught video on Instagram that we can roll back right now, where you can clearly see 5 hooded suspects wearing masks and basically smashing and grabbing whatever they could take from the front window of that store.
The youths.
Before fleeing the scene. LAPD is all over Beverly Hills PD rather is all over this investigation. Reporting live.
They may need to call Eddie Murphy back from Detroit, Axel Foley. Got to solve the crime in Beverly Hills. I'm sure there's a rich white man behind it. So maybe that stuff like that is the reason why LA is shrinking. Never thought I'd see this, guys. Los Angeles' population dropped by 176,000 people in the first full year of pandemic, the second largest drop nationwide, second to New York, of course. Incoming super chat from the guest. They'll give it any advice besides strapping up and fighting back. It's so pathetic. Basically, surrender to the criminal. So that's the reason why just people are leaving LA. 176,000 it shrank by. Remember, this is a city where you have incoming illegal immigration. That means the outflow is so bad that it's even outpacing illegal immigration into LA.
The city saw a drop in population in 2021, the first full year of the pandemic.
That includes right here in Los Angeles. Let's go back to Eyewitness News reporter John Gregory live in the newsroom with the details on this exodus here, John.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's a total surprise for a lot of people. According to a new report, a census report regarding the population in L.A. and other big metro areas, the population did go down, decreased in L.A. by 176,000 people in 2021, making it the second biggest drop nationwide. In the L.A. area, the number of births did outnumber the number of deaths, and there was an increase in international residents. But it wasn't enough to overcome the loss of tens of thousands of residents who simply moved away. The population of the L.A. metro area dropped to 12.9 million people. That's compared to other big markets like New York, who saw the biggest drop in population at 328,000. Chicago lost 91,000. But Dallas gained 97,000 people, and Houston increased by 69,000. Experts say the pandemic and housing costs led to the shifts, and the rise of remote work made it less of a requirement for many workers to live in expensive cities to take advantage of the high-paying jobs.
Yep.
Major metro.
So, LA shrinking by the minute. 176,000 less people now in LA in the course of a year. And this, it's just sickening. Again, I mean, they're after your kids, people. This is gross. This organization collected chest binders to send people, including minors, who want to pretend to be boys. So, for those of you who have daughters, this group supplies your daughters, who knows if it's behind your back or whatever, these things to, I guess, bind their chests so they could look flat-chested and pass for boys. When did this become a thing?
May these binders be a blessing to all those who receive them. We continue to ask for strength and comfort and grace for everybody who helps with the binder distribution and the transition closet. And I just simply pray that there might be joy in the life of all those who receive and wear them. So be it.
I hate to do this to you guys, but I think we need to be reminded on a daily basis that there is evil in the world, and it is targeting your children. Think about it. I mean, what kind of people, essentially, without you asking them to, go to your kids and start engaging with them on topics about sex, sexuality, transgenderism, and this. If you have to be reminded, I think we have to be reminded, guys. I'm gonna engage in a little shock therapy here. These people are not playing. They are not playing.
Them not to hate. We're coming for them. We're coming for your children. We're coming for them. We're coming for your children. We're coming for them. Your children will care about fairness and justice for others. Your children will work to convert all their sisters and brothers. Then soon we're almost certain your kids will start converting you. The gay agenda is coming home. The gay agenda is here. But you don't have to worry. Because there's nothing wrong with standing by our side. Get on board in a hurry, because the world always needs a bit more pride. No, you don't have to worry, because there's nothing wrong with standing by our side. Get on board in a hurry, because the world always needs a bit more pride. Come on, try a little pride. We'll convert your children, then we'll turn to you, giving up the fear inside is freeing like you never knew. Go and see San Francisco.
I mean, it can't be any more clear, guys. Just every time you need yourself to be reminded, just look at that San Francisco gay men's choir, and just remember, these people, they're not even hiding it anymore. I mean, think about all these teachers. Where did all this come from? All of a sudden, all these teachers want to talk to kindergartners and to third graders about sexual topics, and then make an explicit note to not have the parents involved. Hey, kids, it'll be our little secret. And which goes to show you that shit has gotten so far. Shit has gone so far that this guy is trolling. And he had me for half. I thought this was real. Think about it. You can't tell what's a troll from what's real these days. This guy, he's the troll of the month, guys. This guy with the beanie over, the gray beanie on, and the Biden for president with the pride E. I literally, for almost half this video, I thought this was a real, genuine far leftist. But here, watch this. You tell me, at what point would you have figured out that this is a troll?
Ukraine and Russia. If we had a nuclear war, it would be worth it if it could just save one life. What?
is to get vaccinated while supporting Ukraine in the fight. And that is your social responsibility. Everybody! One of the people I look up to, who I've begun to love, is Klaus Schwab, and he said by 2030, you will own nothing and be happy. And I stand with him because I am not selfish! And those who stand against it are selfish! My closing statement, my only regret is that I didn't stop Breonna Taylor's killers. I still remember like it was yesterday. I was shopping at Target in the Pride section looking for a shirt for my 6-year-old openly gay transgender nephew after I got off work at Starbucks where I'm a barista. But at least I know that I was helping the LGBTQ community while Breonna Taylor was killed. Every night I lay on my pillow and I pray that Dr. Fauci will make a vaccine for white supremacy. I hate myself!
Thank you. That's your time. Appreciate it. Well,
I'm going to take a knee for George Floyd.
yeah. Could you do that over there so we can...
Hold on. Is that lady wiping tears? What? Back up. Is she wiping tears?
I hate myself!
Thank you. That's your time. Appreciate it. Well,
I'm going to take a knee for George Floyd.
yeah.
He made her cry. Holy shit.
Could you do that over there so we can get the next person? Thank you. Okay. If we could, so we'll take like a 5-minute break and wipe all that down. So.
Oh, man. I think he made that lady cry. Okay, so I guess I was the only one that was fooled through that part of that. All right, guys. Guess we have to go through our daily war update here. What do we got here? Got some videos here. Only 2 videos I put aside today. All right, so this one just shows you how crazy this war is. Where it's, I'm calling like the Super Bowl of extremist groups, where you have basically every conceivable kind of group of violent extremists that you could think of in this region of the world have all converged in Ukraine to engage in warfare, and sometimes on both sides. So here we have in this Polish Twitter account, Visegrad24, Chechens from the Sheikh Mansour Volunteer Battalion. These are Chechens fighting on the Ukrainian side, shooting at Russian forces near Kyiv. Now, it's quite possible, because the forces around Kyiv, that they're actually shooting against some of Kadyrov's Chechens fighting on the Russian side. So here we have a war between 2 Slavic nations, where we have radical Muslim extremists fighting on both sides. So Chechens fighting in a war between Slavic nations against other Chechens, both sides screaming Allahu Akbar. If both sides are screaming Allah Akbar, which side is the enemy of Allah, and which ones go to paradise when they die? I don't know. You figure it out.
Come on.
sides are shouting Allahu Akbar in the middle of the battle. How do you tell who's the enemy of Allah? This is crazy.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Bismillah.
Here's based RPG guy exposing himself to fire to shoot off that RPG. I don't know. Is there no cover there? Jesus, dude. I guess he's putting his faith in the Almighty.
ها؟ هيا سريع هيا ها خليه سريع سريع هتمشي
I mean, that's just an amazing battle there, where you have guys just. If you're running out there with an RPG, just exposing yourself, are you trying to get shot? Here's one, comparing real life war to video games, and that's kind of what happens when you introduce drones into this. If the war in Ukraine were a video game, using drones for artillery spotting is just broken. I mean, you could just look at this video. Let me let it play here. If this was an actual video game, they would be nerfing the artillery spotter drones, because these guys on the ground, I believe these are Russians, they don't have a chance. I mean, you're gonna continue. First of all, this is at night, so it's like it's got night vision, and it's just gonna walk the artillery onto the Russian units. You know, they have to pull over and sleep at night, and these guys get pounded, and you've got an artillery spotter drone, and it's just correcting the fire onto them. I mean, just look. You can see the rounds falling, right? Boom, 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 and the drone is just correcting the fire. It's just so broken. Kill that music. This would get seriously nerfed if this was like Call of Duty or something of that effect. This would definitely get nerfed, guys. Unbelievable. So let's talk about the major developments over there in the war in Ukraine. Not too big today. This shouldn't take forever. Although some crazy stuff did happen. First, we'll look at the New York Times put together a brilliant piece. Now, believe it or not, this is one group that works in the New York Times that does great work. They actually cleared Rittenhouse.
These are radio transmissions intercepted from Russian soldiers in Ukraine.
You know what? I'm just going to restart that because the potato is having a rough time opening like 26 windows. It's at the same time with all this video. So I want to play this for you guys in full. So this is the same unit of the New York Times that, believe it or not, I think did a lot of work that got Kyle Rittenhouse cleared. So this is like, ironically, the New York Times, one of their only credible news units. It's called their video. What do they call themselves? Visual investigations. And these guys do actual reporting using analyzing video and audio and all that stuff that comes out of these places. And they put together this great report on the confusion of these Russian units as they were fighting in this town called Makariv, which is west of Kyiv. And like I've mentioned in previous live streams, you have this almost hobbyists of ham radio operators and people like that monitoring Russian communications in real time, because some of the Russian units, for some reason, communicate over analog radio unencrypted. Do I have to refresh that again? Here it is. Let's watch.
These are radio transmissions intercepted from Russian soldiers in Ukraine. What you're hearing are real-time battlefield communications between rank-and-file units on the front lines. They reveal a Russian military early on, already facing major challenges to get air support and fuel, and even possibly committing war crimes. It's not clear why some Russian military units are using unencrypted frequencies, but what it means is that people with access to a radio receiver can listen in and record their conversations, or interfere. We collected hundreds of recordings like these,
The Dukes of Hazzard.
painstakingly captured by ham radio operators and open source groups across the world. We focused on radio intercepts from the first 24 hours of the Russian assault on Makariv, a small town along a strategic highway about 30 miles west of Kyiv. These intercepts give a rare, unvarnished window into the operations.
I want to point out, you get to actually know some of these voices, because it sound you start to see that there's a command relationship between these guys, and I guess if you listen to them long enough, you'll start to identify with them as people, because that's what you're gonna hear here. They're soldiers. When they get into fights, they're scared, and they curse. Shit's going down. It gets real, and you can just see a sense. You feel like if you have any sense of humanity, and so you really feel bad for them in some sense.
Of an invading army plagued by communication errors and logistical problems. So how did we determine these were Russian troops speaking? By linking these radio exchanges with visual evidence and eyewitness accounts. Listen, for example, to this next transmission about a battle in a village called Motizhin. Callsign Yug-95 reports his unit pulled out of the battle and lost an armored vehicle called an MTLB. This aligns with a telegram post from the mayor of Makariv about an hour earlier, and with videos verified by the Times showing Russians entering Motizhin that afternoon. We also see Russian armor littering the area the next day, including at least one MTLB, like Yug-95 reported. Motizhin is just one of many specific battle locations around Makariv that we heard Russian troops mention on the radio intercepts. We cross-checked these with visuals we geolocated to document sites and times of Russian military activity. What we were able to capture are mostly visual and audio fragments, not necessarily the full sequence of events. But by piecing them together, we can establish the dynamics that were playing out on the ground during the first attack on Makariv, which was a bucolic and peaceful place until February 27th. That morning, locals spot Russian military vehicles moving into the area.
Поломали один столб, фонарь сбили, клумбу переехали.
Within hours, we hear Russian troops on the radio giving battlefield updates.
Буран 30, я Юг-95. Сбили вражескую вертушку двумя стрелами. Сбили одну вертушку двумя. Прием.
Over the course of the assault,
So I think Yug-95 reports up to Buran 30, call sign. So I'm guessing Buran 30 is the officer of whatever unit this is.
Russians openly disclose attack plans for anyone to hear.
В ваших интересах через 10 минут начинает работать штурмовая авиация. Как понял, прием? Снег 02, понял.
Their language is often raw.
Все координаты, давайте будем туда наносить удары. Разведем их в пух и прах, этих уёбков, прием.
Looking out of their windows, residents see firefights erupting. In the following radio transmission, we hear repeated orders to strike an entire residential area after it's cleared of so-called property, which is likely code for Russian personnel or equipment.
Yeah, so the Russians know that they're on open channels, so they do try to speak in some form of codes because they have to know that people are listening in and they can hear the communications, and it would kind of give them away. If you're wondering why some of them talk, it's their communications are all fucked up. And you're going to see in this report, even the guy is even saying over the radio, I can't get in touch with our air support, blah, blah, blah. The whole thing, their encrypted communication system basically is not working.
Было принято решение убрать первое хозяйство от населенного пункта и накрыть населенный пункт артиллерией. Прием. Медленнее, говори еще раз, повтори. Убрать первое.
Super chat from Sid Cole. Turkish drones, Neo Bayraktar. Yes, they will. I believe, or the New York Times investigative unit believes, that one of these attacks where they're under duress is from a Turkish Bayraktar drone.
Visual evidence and interviews show multiple instances where Russians appeared to have openly fired on civilians around Makariv.
Вторую семью расстреляли. Там человек лежит внутри. В сторону Макарова, вот туда не ехать, там русские танки стоят.
The following security camera footage shows a Russian armored vehicle firing several rounds into this sedan, without any apparent warning or provocation. The passengers, an elderly couple, were killed instantly. Videos and photos show Russian forces did take significant losses. And at one point, we hear a frantic dispatch from a unit under attack. There are even moments when call sign Buran 30 sounds close to tears. Over the course of the initial battle, the skies were rocked with explosions. In a series of radio exchanges, we hear how communication failures delay urgent requests for air support amid mounting casualties.
Alright, so here you're going to hear Yug-95 ask for air support, as apparently his unit is in a bad way. And then when he doesn't get it, he starts screaming, you know, dude, where's our air support? And the guy, he's like, he can't get through. Remember, this is early in the war. They didn't realize that their communications were not going to work.
Принял тебя, принял. Пытаемся, прием. Пацаны страдают.
30 minutes later, air support still hasn't arrived.
Буран 30, я Юг-95. Про поддержку, блядь. Воздуха забыли, блядь. Забыли, прием.
Video evidence suggests some Russian units were not only attacked, but left stranded. The radio chatter is full of troops who lack critical supplies.
Мне необходима остро дозаправка, вода, продукты. Я тебе на прием. Нужна срочно заправка. Техника встает на дороге, срочно заправка.
And Russian troops face yet another menace. Ukrainian interlopers mocking them on their open radio channels.
Yes, I've seen other reports and heard recordings of this. Because they're forced to transmit over the air open, you got Ukrainians on the other side that shit talk, and the Russians and the Ukrainians talk shit back and forth, and it jams up the comms anyway. So it's like, it's just confusing sometimes when you hear the shit talk going back and forth. They're not going to really go into that here. I'm just letting you know what I've heard here.
Russian forces are now using more code words and cell phones to communicate, but signals are still compromised. The Times has found that even many generals are using unsecured phones and radios, which has led to at least one getting tracked and killed by Ukrainians. Ukrainian officials claim they have been pushing Russians out of the town of Makariv for now. But fighting in the area continues. So does the radio chatter.
So, interesting piece, and because they've been doing great work since that Kyle Rittenhouse piece, where I was shocked that the New York Times essentially made the defense case for Kyle Rittenhouse, and it basically said, look, this looked like self-defense. They were the ones that were showing video of the guy shooting first. So it's like, this is the same, I believe it's the same guys, the visual investigations team at the New York Times. So, take it for what it's worth. But the big event that happened today was this was a shit show for the Russian Navy at Mariupol. I guess they've been, they took, not Mariupol, where was this, what's the name of this port? They supply Mariupol through this port. The units that are sieging it. Berdyansk, that's it. So, the Ukrainians apparently have sunk in a Russian ship and damaged two other of these, they're called LSTs. These are like, basically the ships that do amphibious landings for the military. So the Russians, I think they had 3 of them docked at this port called Berdyansk. And basically this is how they get supplies to the people that are, I don't know if it's just the ones in the east or if it's all the forces. Ukraine claims that attack destroyed Russian naval ship in Berdyansk harbor. Let's play the video. There's lots of video of this. It's crazy.
What do you think?
Смотри, горит. Блядь, все попалят, суки. Все попалят, суки.
Now, it's not known at this time what exactly happened. If this was an anti-ship missile. They claim it was an anti-ship missile, but, we can't not confirmed at the time if it was that, if it was artillery, or just plain old sabotage. But, they got really messed up. There's more video here. So you can see the ship that blew up is basically on fire and pretty much done there. The 2 other Russian ships that were docked basically near it, they're also on fire, and they just put out. They left the port. They left the harbor. They got out of Dodge. They're like, we're under fire here. So you're gonna see them quickly put out to sea. Emergency, emergency. Even with fires raging, I guess they figured it's safer to fight the fire while they're under motion than to stay sitting stationary and be targeted by whatever hit the first ship. So you could see how fast they're getting the hell out of Dodge. As shit gets worse over there, the fire just keeps spreading. Ammunition starts blowing up and fuel. And you could make out the ship number there, 58. So that's how they know the names of these ships, because obviously we know all the Russian ship hull numbers. So they're getting the fuck out. That ship is done. You could see multiple holes in the hull. It's gone. Not getting that one back. That's several. I don't even know what the rubles are worth now. So it could be hundreds of millions. It could be billions of rubles for all we know. Yeah, Putin gonna be big mad. Now you can see the shape of the second ship getting the hell out of there. They've got a worse fire. They've got fire on the deck. They had to fight that fire as they put out to sea. And believe it or not, we've got even better video than that. I'm pretty sure because I tabbed it. So we know that the Ukrainians claim that they fired a Tochka-U short-range ballistic missile. Now, when you see these -U's under the after the name of the missile, sometimes that means undersea. So does that mean this was fired from a submarine? It could be this could have been a sub-fired munition. Usually when I see a U after the name of a missile, that tends to hit that it's, quote, underwater. But I don't know that for sure. I'm not familiar with this weapon system, Tochka. Anyway, so one Alligator-class landing ship. I think LST is landing ship tank, so I think these transport vehicles. One Alligator-class LST sunk. The two ships that escaped were the Rapucha-class LSTs. Let's see, 7:45 a.m. Tochka-U SRBM was fired towards the landing ship Saratov, the Cesar Kunikov, and the Novcherkassk. The Saratov sunk at a depth of 5 meters. That's the ship that sunk at the while docked. The Kunikov and the Novcherkassk left port damaged. 8 were killed on the Kunikov and 3 killed and 3 injured. I guess on the other ship. I guess, is this the same angle or a different angle? No, it's the same video. Okay, this is from further away. This is on the other side of the port. This video is 2 minutes long. Let's see, there's somebody walking on the beach here. Now you can see the explosions are going off in the distance. The birds got frightened away. Birds are like, hey, shit's exploding over there across the water. You got this dude walking along the beach here, and I guess he doesn't know what's going on. And then when there's more explosions, you can see him look. Now he's looking over. He's like, what's going on over there? You could see the Russian ships leaving. All right, so that's not telling us much. That's just somebody's 3-second cell phone video. Saratov was scuttled to prevent an ordnance explosions. Okay, so that was the ship that sank. So it looks like the crew deliberately scuttled it to prevent the ammunition inside the ship from going off. In addition to the destroyed Orsk, the following ships of the quote-unquote occupiers were damaged. Fire on the Saratov, Kunikov, and Novchuk. They identify the same hulls. Saw this video. Guess these are images. Alright, so there's several stories on this, I guess. Ukraine destroyed a Russian naval vessel, Kyiv Navy claims. The occupiers are burning well, Ukraine's armed forces said. Somebody in the chat wrote, LST equals large, slow target. Well, yeah, they were docked, so, I mean, they weren't even moving. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that if you're firing at it. And the Fox News story doesn't tell you much. Pretty much everybody has the same video. But there was one that was like a time lapse that shrunk a 10-minute time period into less than 2 minutes. Anyway, here's once those ships left the harbor, you have these commercial satellite companies that are able to track these ships easily because remember, they're on fire, so they give up smoke plumes. Update: burning Russian landing ship at Berdyansk visible in satellite imagery from earlier today. Also visible are the 2 other Rapucha-class landing ships, one sailing in circles, various tugs and smaller craft rushing around. So the significance of the sailing in circles thing, for those of you who are in the Navy, or even for those of you who've served on merchant vessels maybe, you could see this is where they were docked. That's where the Alligator class, the Korsatov, where it was scuttled by the crew. And you could see it's still burning. Right? Here you could see when those 2 ships left the port, they went out past the edge of the harbor, and this one's sailing in circles, one of the Rapucha class ones. I suppose this is one that had more damage. You can see it's giving off the smoke plumes. The reason you would sail these ships in circles is that when you take battle damage, you have to check the ship before, if you want to sail the thing. So when you shove off, you have to check for damage. See if your rudder responds, and so you would sail it in circles to make sure and check your ship's systems to make sure that you can safely sail the vessel. So here is the 2 Rapuchas, and then you have these ships. I guess also left the dock just to be safe because you can't be docked while this ship is potentially, ammunition is cooking off. These are some more close-up photos. So all in all, a bad day for the Russian Navy because in addition to losing that Alligator class one, these 2 Rapucha class ships are probably going to have to go back to their home port. Especially that one that had the bigger fire on the deck, and that's going to take months to repair. So essentially probably at least 2, maybe 3 of these ships for the near future are going to be out of any amphibious operation to take Odessa if they want to attempt that anytime within the next month. So that's the significance of this operation. It kind of hampers the Russian ability to put troops or at least vehicles, if that's what it is, these LSTs, in any potential, because, and remember, the captured plants that they've captured off captured Russian soldiers pretty much show that the original intent was to have an amphibious operation for Odessa, but who knows what their plans are now. Here we have a little bit more of Grand Theft Auto Ukraine, where we have 2 Ukrainian youths, I guess we'll call them, having a joyride. What'd they steal here? Ukrainian youngsters have stolen a Russian APC and are now cruising near Sumy. So GTA Sumi over here, the two Ukrainian youths, taking a big chance here because, you know, I'm pretty sure that if you're driving around in a Russian military vehicle, you may get shot by your own countrymen.
Пиздили БТР в русских. Пиздили он БТР. Ебашим! Ебашим, пока вас не ебашили, нахуй. Работает элита, вон, прицелы наводящие, блядь. Ебать. Мы хуярим. Спиздили БТР, блядь.
Yeah, so we'll give these two Ukrainian youths an honorary two youths.
Is it possible the two youths?
Two what? What was that word?
What word?
To what?
What?
Did you say Utes?
Yeah, two youths.
What is a Ute?
So those are the two youths of the day. The Ukrainian youths. Oh, those youths. It's always the youths, isn't it? Alright, so the much vaunted Kyiv counteroffensive. I guess we're going to have to talk about that. Kyiv counteroffensive has begun, showing success. This was a report by NBC. So when they say counteroffensive, they're talking about the western salient west of the Dnieper River. That's on the outskirts of Kyiv. Here is Richard Engel of NBC News. He was in a briefing with the Ukrainian military, and he got a look at one of the unclassified maps. So obviously this is a map they're allowing him to see. And let's see his report.
We're now in the municipality, one of the main control centers here in Kyiv, and we just saw a very interesting map. And by the way, it's not classified. The deputy mayor and a senior military liaison officer said that all the information here is verified, but that we can show it, that it doesn't risk any operational details or put any troops at risk. But it's very revealing. This is Kyiv right here in the center. And these Russian areas, these red areas, are all Russian-controlled territory. So you see, just to the north of Kyiv, there's a big Russian area, and to the northeast, there's another Russian area. But what's interesting about this map is all of these blue spots, and there's quite a few of them. These are all areas that have been captured by Ukrainian forces, recaptured from Russian territory or from Russian troops just over the last 48 hours, with many of them, particularly here in this sector, over the last 24 hours. And this, they say, is the biggest counteroffensive that they've seen since the start of the war, the most blue that they've ever had on this map, and they're finding it very encouraging. They say, obviously, the goal is to get rid of all of these red splotches, but so far, with this counteroffensive just about 48 hours in, there have been significant changes around the capital.
All right, so I guess if we could zoom in a little bit, you could see what the Russians are doing and why they have problems sometimes is when they do this. When you see a solid red blob area, that's an area that they've taken over and pretty much occupied, taken care of any stragglers or strong points. Here, when you see these things where they just go down and follow a road, this is essentially the Russians probing forward along a highway, past their logistics train in some cases, and they just bypass points of resistance. And then the Ukrainians, they'll have like insurgents, they'll strike at the supply lines in their rear. So this is where the Russians run into problems when they do stuff like this. Whereas on the west side of the Dnieper River, they pretty much don't do that. You notice they do that a lot here on the east side. Whoever is the commander of this of this formation doesn't seem to have a problem taking risks, sending recon units down the roads. But the blue areas are areas that were formerly under Russian control that the Ukrainians claim they've taken back. So you can see some of these little blue areas. Here's that town of Markiv. But fortunately, we don't have to just depend on... Well, let's see what's going on here. Analyst breaks down how Ukraine is turning the tables on Russia.
North and west of Kyiv appears to have made some headway. This is video that was produced and posted by the regional police in Kyiv, who toured the city of Makariv, which is about 40 miles west of Kyiv.
So keep in mind, the Russians did hold Makariv for the past several weeks. So the fact that the Ukrainians are able to walk around there, and I believe they've planted their flag back at the city center. So the fact that they've been able to get back in there and plant their flag there again pretty much proves that they've taken this back.
Makariv appears to have been deserted by Russian forces, though Ukrainian forces say it is still being hit by Russian artillery. If Ukrainian forces are able to consolidate their control in this area, it would limit Russia's ability to attack Kyiv. Let's talk a little bit more about this now with CNN Global Affairs analyst and contributor to Time Magazine, Kimberly Dozier. This is something that really stands out as we talk about Ukrainians really pushing back, bringing the fight to Russians. Tell us a little bit about Makariv and what we're seeing.
Well, you can see it's in contested areas inside the areas that Russia has been controlling. But it shows some proof of what the Ukrainians have been telling us they plan to do, counteroffensives to start taking back key strategic areas. Now, this wasn't supposed to happen. You can see that the Russian troops were trying to encircle Kyiv, something they thought would happen within 24 to 48 hours. At least that's what U.S. officials were fearing and predicting. And now even areas like Irpin are contested as the Ukrainian forces push back. And in Irpin, thanks to the spring, even the river is flooded, which is blocking...
Yeah, so keep in mind, the biggest reason why there's been no advances here, this shit is just a big fucking mud bog right here. You can't drive through here if you want to. I don't think the Ukrainians could even go through there. Think about it. This is Chernobyl. If you guys have ever played any video game that goes around Chernobyl, the terrain, even in the video games, let's say you play Call of Duty, it's called the Pripyat Marsh. It's a swamp, this whole freaking area. So even down here, these areas here, there is a flood here. So they pretty much, you can't go through that. That's a flooded area. So the Ukrainians strategically using the natural terrain to their advantage. So this here, again, mud bog. They had to go around it, the Russians. So for those of you who are wondering why this looks so crazy, if you're wondering if the Russians are retarded, nah, it's that this is just bad for tanks to go through there.
Russian troop progress, so it's like even nature is fighting against them.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was wondering why it was flooded because there were some questions about there, but it really just is this change. We've seen it behind our reporters, the change in the weather, and so you have this increasing flow. Can we talk a little bit about Russian forces? Jim touched on this a bit. They have obviously been experiencing a lot of headwinds, and we knew that. Now they're experiencing frostbite.
Yes, we've been hearing from Ukrainian officials in their daily war reports that they're intercepting communications where the Russian troops say they're demoralized, they can't always pick up all their dead and wounded, and they don't have some of the basic supplies, some of the good medical care that U.S. troops are used to traveling with, and their logistics lines are still pretty terrible. So they're running out of food, depending on where you are located on the battlefield. This is the kind of thing that NATO worked with the Ukrainian military to fix. So what we see is the old way of fighting versus the new.
Is this part of the reason why we're seeing Belarus considering at this point in time getting into the fight?
Yeah, they're, as the Pentagon has told us, Russia deployed about 75% of its tactical battalions, the combat forces that it uses to prosecute this type of an invasion. That means if the battle losses are as reported, between 7,000 to 10,000 killed in action, when you add maybe a ratio of 3 or 4 wounded to every person killed, you're talking about tens of thousands of Russian troops off the battlefield. They need reinforcements. Belarus it shares a border with Ukraine. It's got a trained military that's already been drilling with the Russian military. So they know how to communicate with each other. And the Belarusian president owes his presidency to Vladimir Putin because when he was elected in a contested election that the U.S. didn't recognize a couple years back, and there were tens of thousands of Belarusians on the streets protesting against it, Putin sent in Russian troops to reinforce his rule and keep him in power. So he owes his very presidency to Moscow.
Yeah, they're in this together.
Yeah, which ironically, many people are speculating that's why he hasn't sent his army in there. It's his army that's keeping him in power, and if he sends them into Ukraine and they get chewed up, he's up shit's creek. His own people hate him. There are actually Belarusians fighting on the Ukrainian side. I mean, he's got a lot of people that left Belarus to go fight for the Ukrainians, figuring, I guess, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Like I said, this is a strange war. You got strange bedfellows, every kind of extremist fighting on every kind of side. So you got Belarusians on both sides. You got Chechens on both sides. It's crazy. Now, this is a more... I gave you guys the NBC and CNN view, which clearly I'm guessing a lot of you are skeptical of them. So I went out and I like to use these guys to check their work. They're a more independent group. This is the ISW, Study of War, Institute for the Study of War. They seem to keep a clear-eyed view of what's going on. They have a more somber assessment, less ebullient. Today's map includes significant changes due to Ukrainian counteroffensive over the past 2 days. The expanded areas of assessed Russian control in Luhansk are the result of improved data on our end and do not indicate that the Russians have made further gains in recent days. So they're indicating that if this looks larger than what they've shown before, it's not because the Russians suddenly made an advance there. It's because, they've updated their map to reflect reality. So let's take a closer look at their maps. They indicate here, similar to what we saw, that salient around Kyiv. You can see there's a blue area that the Ukrainians, they say, have taken control of. They blow it up a little bit. You can see another smaller area here. But the big blob is the area near Markariv. And you can see what they call here assessed Russian advances in Ukraine, assessed Russian-controlled Ukrainian territory, claimed Russian control over Ukrainian territory, so the areas in yellow around Mariupol, and I forgot what you call this place. Is it Kyrgyzstan or something like that? Forgive me if my Ukrainian isn't up to spec, I mean. And then the blues are the claimed areas of Ukrainian counteroffensives, and then the blue dots are areas where they have observed Ukrainian protests against Russian occupation. So these are places that are villages and towns under Russian control where the local populace is showing signs of resistance. So I believe they come in closer. Here we are around Mariupol. Now, Mariupol, the Russians have the eastern half of the city. They have they go very deep here. You got Chechen fighters that have been located over here as of March 20th. It is now the 24th. So as of 4 days ago, Kadyrov's Chechens were here, basically at the front, in control of eastern Mariupol. This area, gold area here, is the Azovstal metallurgical factory, which Russian forces claimed control over on March 10th. So this would have been 2 weeks ago. So this, if they were to make a game of this I imagine would be a that factory in Stalingrad. Whenever you play any World War II game, and you have a map that's based in Stalingrad, you're always fighting over that factory in the middle of Stalingrad with the smokestack. This is a metallurgical factory, and I imagine that would be the Mariupol version of that. The Mariupol Regional Intensive Care Hospital, which Russian forces seizes on March 15th, is actually in western Mariupol. So this white area is basically what's left of Mariupol under Ukrainian control. It's otherwise totally surrounded. So the Ukrainian forces, the Azov battalion, I believe, is in there. They're kind of in this little pocket, and they're the hardest fighters on the Ukrainian side, but at least by reputation. And that's what's giving the Russians trouble closing in on them. So here's the Mariupol theater, which the Russian Air Force bombed on March 16th. And you can see them, they're squeezed in here. And for some reason, the Russians haven't been able to overrun them. I think the reason is because this is real cities, house-to-house fighting. I wouldn't want to fight the Azov battalion under those conditions. Those fuckers are crazy. You've seen pictures of what they do to their own people. I mean, they're essentially Nazis, so I imagine probably amongst the dirtiest fighters you could ever encounter. So imagine the warfare going on in the streets of Mariupol between neo-Nazis and radical Islamic Chechen fighters under Kadyrov. That to me is a potential Stalingrad for the next few weeks. I imagine if you're a civilian in Mariupol, you are living in a hell right now. Because you're probably afraid of both sides, to be honest with you. Super chat from Lucifer the Doberman. Your recent work has been better than all the Yank mainstream media combined. I'm glad V Radio told me about you. Well, thank you very much, Lucifer the Doberman. Didn't know you're not an American? Where are you from, if you don't mind my asking? Assess control of terrain around Kyiv. So now this is a blow-up of the Kyiv area. It looks like Kyiv is safe up to a radius of 25 kilometers from the city center, except for this little piece from the east that the Russians look like they have a recon element going down this road. These red dots inside of the Russian-controlled territory represent Russian-occupied villages, according to the Bucha City Council. So this area here was that suburb of Kyiv called Bucha. And so here the Bucha City Council shows those villages that the Russians do control in that area. Now the Makariv region that the Ukrainians claim they retook is here. And it looks like they're trying to put a bulge here. And I guess what they're trying to say here is that the Russians are not in danger of being cut off, as the Ukrainians claimed yesterday. They don't see any evidence of that. But what I do see is this element here. If they don't pull back, or if the Russians don't make gains here, this little element here could be in trouble. I don't know what these little villages are named on this main road here, with what they call it, Highway 40. So that could be in trouble there, but for the most part, this area here, these guys they're not in danger of being cut off. So I want to make, at least according to more independent assessments. Yeah, here's these guys. Damian Simon puts mapping with Kupshur and Simtak highlights counteroffensives by Ukraine west of Kyiv, making gains. However, a previous slowdown in Russia's advances might pick up as observations indicate new forces are being brought into the battlefield. So these guys claim that Russia is bringing up reinforcements and that they would expect at some point they're going to try to restart their stalled offensive. Let's read what he has to say here. Russia-Ukraine war. I like to call it the Russo-Ukrainian war. Believe it or not, it just sounds better to me. I'm going to guess that history is going to be on my side, and this is going to be called the Russo-Ukrainian War of 2022. As U.S. President Joe Biden visits Europe to coordinate policy in support of Ukraine with European and NATO leaders, Russia appears to struggle to keep its offensive in Ukraine going. Over the past several days, Russian forces have barely managed any advance at all. Additional deployments of fresh forces suggest that a renewed effort to regain momentum could happen soon. The Ukrainian armed forces have managed to advance against Russian forces northwest of Kyiv, and along with intense artillery bombardments of Russian positions, are ramping up the pressure in this area. Claims of an encirclement of Russian forces in this area have not been substantiated by reliable information and are likely exaggerated. Other information also suggests the current line of contact between Ukraine and Russia in this area is currently located just west of Borodyanka. Though Russia has not been able to force any advances in recent days, several observations indicate that Russia is bringing new forces into the battlefield. Such deployments have been observed at fronts facing Kyiv, Chernihiv, Kharkiv, and the Zaporizhia-Donetsk line. It would appear from these deployments that Russia intends to double down on existing efforts to renew its ability to advance by committing additional forces. So here they make note of the Ukrainian counteroffensive that, I guess if you want to call it the Battle of the Bulge, it's like a tiny little bulge going into the Russian salient there. Ukrainian forces conducted a counteroffensive and appear to be making gains against the western flank of Russian forces blocked by the defensive actions along the Irpin River. Limited Russian counterattacks were held back. So that's the flooded Irpin River that we keep hearing about. Russia continues offensive actions at Rubizne, but has not managed to advance over the past days. So it looks like they're still outside of Kharkiv here. I don't know what's going on in Donetsk and Luhansk. It seems like they're just kind of sitting there. Mariupol seems to me that, like we just looked at the situation there, they're surrounded. I don't know how they're going to hold out. I don't imagine they're getting any new shipments of food or ammunition in there. So that seems to be a matter of time before Mariupol falls. It's just the question is how many casualties are the Russians going to take doing it? Because I just don't think the Azov battalion seems to be the sorts of people who surrender. If they were, they would have surrendered a long time ago. Russian-supported separatist forces made limited gains along the Donetsk front while the siege of Mariupol continues. So, a less ebullient opinion on the state of the war. Still, I guess, slightly favorable to the Ukrainians, but one predicting future Russian resupplies to an attempt to start their advance again. So now we're going to talk about the Putin's purge going on in Russia. Now there's really people are really starting to wonder what's going on in Russia, because here we need to help the Kremlin find its defense minister who disappeared. Now, I've jokingly started a hashtag on Twitter called hashtag Where's Shoigu, because Sergei Shoigu, remember the guy that when Putin started talking about nuclear, putting his forces on nuclear alert, and he had his top general there making faces. Yeah, that was Sergei Shoigu. He hasn't been seen since that meeting. That was he last appeared in the news on March 11th when he talked to his Turkish counterpart. On March 18th, he reportedly participated in a meeting and a ceremony. You know, he was listed as participating, but he doesn't appear in any of the pictures or videos. So here's Putin at the table. That room is getting pretty empty. There's not a lot of guys in this room anymore. Big table, not a lot of people, but maybe unfortunately for Shoigu, he might actually be in a gulag, because pictures of his daughter came out holding her baby while wearing the colors of the Ukrainian flag, and she's not put out any tweets in support of the Russian war effort. So a lot of domestic Russian media outlets are taking Shoigu's daughter to task for insufficient patriotism. So maybe Shoigu's having problems there. Who knows? I don't know. But certainly Sergei Shoigu has not been seen, which is unusual. This would be like General Milley. You know, you'd expect if the United States were engaged in an active war, that you'd be hearing from the head of the Russian armed forces, essentially their head of their Pentagon, on a nearly daily basis. But this dude's gone MIA. He's suddenly not appearing in meetings with Putin. So we're back to the old days of the Soviet Union, boys. We got Kremlinologists coming again. And here's a story on the daughter of Sergei Shoigu, daughter of Russian defense minister, and her baby girl wear Ukraine's blue and yellow in social media video after she was hit with a wave of anger for her father's military campaign. So her name is Ksenia Shoigu, age 31, has not given the Russian invasion of Ukraine a strong backing. She posted a video with her 6-month-old daughter wearing Ukraine's colors. comes amid a wave of social media ire in light of her father's military operation. Ksenia is the daughter of Russia's longtime defense minister Sergei Shoigu. She's the latest in a line of children of Russian elites to face a major backlash over the war in Ukraine. So you can imagine there's a lot of resentment in Russia. The conscripts have to go fight, of course, the boys. And the children of the elites, people see them kind of, they're certainly not on the front line of the war. And they see her, and if she's interpreted as wearing Ukrainian colors, I could imagine, yes, the Russian nationalists are not going to be too happy with her. So here she is in a video showing off her baby. Don't know what she's saying, of course. Probably Russian, so it wouldn't matter anyway. So you can see she's living well. What's she have here? Some kind of croissant and tea, I don't know, or coffee. There's her father, Sergei Shoigu. Here they are photographed together. So Sergei, MIA. People speculating, is he in trouble because of his daughter? Well, I tend to think not. There's other guys in trouble in Russia right now, and they're not in trouble because of their daughters. So we go here. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu vanishes. Now this became speculation, so the Russians had to say something. Sergei Shoigu's not just some nobody. He can't just disappear. Like I said, it'd be like if General Milley suddenly wasn't seen in Washington for a month. So they've come out with an excuse that Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu has vanished with, quote, heart problems. Now, this is a coded phrase to use in relation to a Russian leader. When you start hearing about Russian leaders having heart problems, this generally doesn't lead to this doesn't comfort you. As strains appear in his relationship with Putin over the Ukraine war, and his daughter poses in Ukraine colors, and I'll tell you why. The significance of the quote-unquote heart problems with Russian leaders. Because here's a story. Well, I'll tell you the story, and I'm sure you'll understand why. The story of Bohdan Stashnisky. Now, Bohdan Stashnisky he's a Russian. He's a former KGB officer and a spy who he assassinated a Ukrainian nationalist leaders named Rev Lebet and Stepan Bandera. This is in the late 50s, back in the grand old days of the Soviet Union, and he defected to West Berlin in 1961. So, old Bohdan Stashnisky, he was born to a family of villagers not far from Lviv, on the western part of modern Ukraine. And Stashnisky completed his early education in 1948 and studied to become a teacher at the Lviv Pedagogical Institute. His family were supporters of the anti-Soviet Ukrainian Insurgent Army. He had 3 sisters who were in the organization. But in 1950, poor Bohdan, he was arrested for traveling without a ticket on public transportation. Remember, you got to show your papers, guys. You're in an authoritarian state. You got to show your papers on public transportation. So after agreeing to act as an informer for the KGB, they let him go. And through his sisters, he infiltrated the workings of the Ukrainian Insurgent Army, the UPA. And he would forward his information to his handlers. Well, I guess at the time they were called the MGB. And in 1953, the MGB, they sent him to Kyiv to continue studying espionage. And in 1954, they sent him to East Germany under the name of Josef Lehmann, and he perfected his knowledge of German there. So in 1956, he would go back and forth to Munich, and he'd basically work on his fake ID, his false identity. Now, the reason I'm mentioning to you this story of this guy is because Stashnisky received the instructions to carry out the assassination directly from the KGB headquarters in Moscow. At the time that was run by Alexander Shelepin, who was the chairman of the Committee of State Security of the Council of Ministers. And they told him to assassinate Lev Rebet and Stepan Bandera, approved by the chairman and the council minister, and of course the leader after Stalin died, Nikita Khrushchev. In 1957, the 25-year-old Stashnisky, he went and used a spray gun that fired a jet of poison gas from a crushed cyanide capsule. The gas designed to induce cardiac arrest, making the victim's death look like a heart attack. Stashnisky used the weapon to kill Lev Rebet in 1957, And on 15th of October 1959, he used an improved version of the same gas gun to assassinate Stepan Bandera in Munich. And Stasnitsky, for his trouble, was honored by Moscow with the Order of the Red Banner for his work. And then they gave him another assignment to go kill Yaroslav Stetsko. So, you know, I guess that's your here's your medal. Now go kill another guy, another anti-Soviet Ukrainian. But anyway, so I think you probably grasp the significance of the story. The Russians have been using the quote-unquote heart attack method since at least the 1950s. And I'm imagining if they were able to give you a heart attack spray in the 1957, I'm guessing by 2022 they've pretty much probably perfected that method. So if Sergei Shoigu suddenly has a convenient heart problem, I find the timing of his heart problem very suspicious. Because formerly this guy was joined at the hip to Vladimir Putin. Here even Vladimir Putin, I mean, think of it, here's Vladimir Putin fishing, and who's sitting next to him in the boat is Sergei Shoigu. So like I said, Sergei, he's not some nobody flunky at the... This is essentially, you don't get any closer to Putin than this guy, and suddenly he's MIA. He's not the only guy. You have Alexander Bortnikov. He's gone. Valery Gerasimov, he hasn't been seen. So there's a lot of guys that people are starting to ask, where are these people? Who's the last guy? Where's the last guy that saw Gerasimov? Again, Gerasimov, another somebody. It's not somebody that you that can disappear without an explanation in the middle of a war. These guys, you have to ask yourself, what's going on? Putin's purge, I think, is every day you don't hear from these people is looking more real. Russia's Ministry of Defense head Sergei Shoigu reportedly missing, hasn't made a public appearance in 12 days. Shoigu's inner circle claiming he's suffering from heart problems, according to the Russian independent news sites. Yes, what does Sergei Shoigu know about the Clintons? Exactly, Chad. Let's see what these people... that probably has nothing to do with the story. So Sergei Shoigu, look, he's formerly, I mean, this was one of the happy people in Russia. I don't think Sergei had any problems until recently. Here he is having a drink with Vladimir Putin. Like I said, this is a somebody. He can't just vanish. Wiped out, Russia loses 2 more commanders as raging Putin orders brutal purge over Ukraine war disaster after battle plans leak. So it's not just the guys at the top. Now mid-level guys are starting to disappear too. 2 more of Vladimir Putin's top commanders have died in Ukraine as the death toll continues to mount in Russia's disastrous invasion. Kremlin officials are reported to have launched a purge of those they believe responsible for the bloody catastrophe that's seen up to 15,300 soldiers killed in Ukraine. Remember, when they use 15,000, they don't just mean Russian military. They're also talking about paramilitary units in the autonomous areas and the Wagner Group. Here's Major Dmitry Toptun, was a tank commander blown up in Izium near Kharkiv. Major Alexei Osokin, one of the many Russian paratroopers killed in Ukraine. So they're not generals, so they're basically talking about people of the rank of major and above, I think, in this case. So Major Dmitry Toptun led a motorized division reported to have been blown up when his armored vehicle was hit by an anti-tank missile while fighting near Izium near Kharkiv. Elsewhere, paratrooper commander Major Alexei Osokin also reported killed during the fighting in Ukraine. The duo add to the death tolls estimated some 17 of Putin's senior commanders have died since Putin invaded last month. So, like I said, I believe they're talking about guys of the rank of major and higher. 17 in less than a month of war is a lot of high-level officers. Anyway, meanwhile, 3 Spetsnaz Special Forces commandos, including one dubbed Agent Stalin, after the vicious Soviet leader, were quote-unquote liquidated during the battle for Mariupol. Putin expected to roll over Ukraine in a matter of days, but the wars ended up seeing his forces bogged down for almost a month with little progress being made, blah, 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 blah. Pushed into Ukraine under-equipped, etc., etc. Okay, so here's the purge stuff. Putin's cronies have now reportedly launched a vicious witch hunt to root out the, quote, guilty men behind the failures in Ukraine. Sources claim the tyrant is incandescent, that the U.S. and Britain have received leaks of his military plans, which have been passed on to the Ukrainians. That's fair, guys. If I was Putin, I would be pissed that just about every other day, you know, Russian military plans and objectives are being leaked by Western intelligence. Clearly, somebody's they're talking over in the Russian military or the intelligence services, and he's irate apparently about that. I think he's also the time has come to put accountability for all the corruption in the Russian system, and I guess he's basically saying if so much corruption exists in these Russian institutions that are under your control, then now that they're failing when push comes to shove, I'm going to hold you responsible for this level of corruption that you've basically let rot at these institutions in Ukraine. So I think that's the other source of his anger. It's believed this alleged leak is seen in part as the reason why top generals and his most elite forces have been targeted so effectively and picked off. I'm only interested in the purge stuff. Here we go. Putin is reported to even be growing wary of his close ally and vacation friend, Sergei Shoigu. Yeah, so I showed you the images, the pictures of Sergei on vacation with Putin multiple times. Suddenly he has a heart attack. Is there now a cover story? Sources say Putin has been dismissive in private of longtime ally Alexander Bortnikov. Not just in private. Didn't he insult him publicly when the war started? I remember something about a meeting with Bortnikov where Putin was saying something that was clearly pretty much insulting Bortnikov. I just remember his name is unusual. That's why I remember this. Pretty sure it was him that was getting pretty much mocked by Putin at that meeting. It was a month ago, though, so my memories of the meeting is fuzzy. FSB security service had started snapping at meetings at Valery Gerasimov, chief of the Russian general staff. Bortnikov has been spoken of as a stand-in leader should Putin fall in a coup. Well, not anymore. Another target of Putin's fury is Igor Kostyukov, deputy chief of the general staff of the armed forces, who may face imminent removal as part of a wider purge. Let's see here. Earlier, ahead of the invasion, he publicly humiliated... Oh, this is the guy. I apologize. It wasn't Bortnikov. It was Sergei Narishkin. Earlier, ahead of the invasion, he publicly humiliated SVR Foreign Intelligence Chief Sergei Narishkin. Yet Putin is reportedly more concerned with losses of military hardware, for which he has blamed Gerasimov, than battlefield casualties. All right, so this would explain the sudden disappearances of these major figures in the Russian hierarchy. Only time will tell. I mean, the difference is if you're in the doghouse, then he might put you under house arrest and then pull you out when he needs you again. So I'm not sure if any of these guys have been sent to the gulag or anything like that. I would imagine that for now, most of these guys are probably under house arrest. Seems to be, and then if he needs scapegoats, he could, hold show trials after the war is over. But I'm guessing for now, most of these people are under some kind of house arrest. Here's another story in the New Yorker. The purges in Putin's shrinking inner circle. Frustrated Russian leader has punished officials for misjudging the invasion of Ukraine, but ordinary citizens remain in the dark. So this is a story in the New Yorker, basically more insight, the same stuff I've been telling you more or less. They go into more detail about what happened with Sergei Narishkin being humiliated just because it was public. I mean, they can't hide that, right? Putin said it in front of the cameras. That meeting was broadcast. So he definitely did humiliate Sergei Narishkin. Heads begin to roll in Russia. This is an opinion by Douglas London, and a contributor to MSN based in London. So you're seeing a lot of different outlets talking about, you know, some sort of purge activity going on inside Russia. Abandoned ship. Now this guy, he got out of Dodge. I guess he saw this going on. Putin advisor bails over Ukraine war and flees Russia. So this guy is probably the smartest one of all. Although Putin has a long reach. Remember, he's poisoned and killed several people in the UK. His famous use of polonium poison in the to get at his opponents. So just because you flee Russia doesn't mean Putin can't still reach you. But anyway, here is Putin's climate change envoy. So this guy is not an important figure in the military or any of that, but he's the stooge that Putin sends to climate change conferences and things like that, so to rub elbows with the likes of John Kerry. So Bloomberg reports that Anatoly Chubai is the highest-ranking Russian official who's opposed the war, and he's fled the country. He may have been a skeptic of Putin anyway, but this defection will be an embarrassment at the very least. Russian climate envoy Anatoly Chubai stepped down and left the country, citing his opposition to President Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine, according to two people familiar with his situation, becoming the highest-level official to break with the Kremlin over the invasion. Chubai, 66, is one of the few 1990s-era economic reformers who remained in Putin's government. So this guy, again, he's one of the old guard. And, what happens is when a dictator gets in trouble, usually the first people to go are the old guard around him, because they're the people that have been around long enough to collect power and respect of people, of the people. Let's put it this way: you look towards the people around you as the people that could knock you over. It's not going to be the people that are just started and don't have power and influence. One of the few 1990s-era economic reformers who's remained in Putin's government and maintained close ties with Western officials, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov didn't immediately respond to a request for comment. Known as the architect of Russia's 1990 privatizations, and those privatizations are essentially what made the oligarchs rich, like Putin's buddies. Chubai gave Putin his first Kremlin job in the mid-1990s. Oh, so he brought Putin in. Well, that explains. He's the guy that brought Putin in there initially. He initially welcomed his rise to power at the end of that decade. Under Putin, Chubai took top jobs at big state companies until the president named him envoy for sustainable development last year. Russian news outlets are reporting on this, surprisingly enough. The UK's Evening Standard relays from those sources that Chubai is holding up in Turkey. The source said Mr. Chubai left the country and had no intention of coming back. Bloomberg reports the bombshell departure, citing two sources. Russia-based news outlets said he resigned and was now in Turkey. He is the highest-profile figure to step down since Russia started what it called a special military operation in Ukraine. Chubai once served as former President Boris Yeltsin's chief of staff. That's the guy that Putin replaced. Was appointed to the post and was charged with achieving goals of sustainable development in 2020, days after resigning as the head of the state technology firm Rusnano, which he ran since 2008. Chubai isn't the first official to publicly resign in protest, though he's the most prominent thus far. Another oligarch/industrialist figure has made his feelings known, though. Last week, Arkady Dvorkovich, who was the senior economic advisor to Dmitry Medvedev, that's Putin's number two, the guy that took over as president while he took a break during his presidency, and a deputy prime minister until 2018, stepped down as head of the state-backed Skolkovo Technology Fund after condemning the invasion. Dvorkovich, who's also president of the International Chess Federation, is one of only a few former senior officials to speak out against the war. Though I don't believe he's fled the country, so maybe that's a stupid move on his part. Something else that's been going on in Moscow, around Moscow, is they've been doing what's believed to be nuclear bug out, what they call nuclear bug out drills. I've never really reported this before because, I don't know if this is normal. Maybe they just always have done this in Russia and we just never noticed, or at least I never noticed. But it's weird because they've repeated it again. So I'll just read what from OSINT Defender is the account. looks like what is presumed to be another nuclear bug-out drill from Moscow this morning. They seem to be doing these almost weekly at this point, and in my opinion, it's very clearly a warning to the West. So they're tracking these flights out of Moscow that appear to be the planes that, if the shit were to ever hit the fan and ICBMs were launched by either side, these are the planes that they would stick the important officials that run Russia in to get them out of Moscow. Obviously, Moscow would be a primary target. So they have tracked this Tupolev 154B-2. I guess these are the tail numbers. Tupolev 214 SUS RA 64524. Tupolev TU-154M RSD-50. And then two Ilyushin 2s. A Ilyushin 262M, the tail number RA86572, and another Ilyushin 2 96300 model, tail number RSD73. So what they do is all these planes take off at the same time and leave and scatter to the four winds. This one doesn't even have a call sign, so that might be the most important one. And every week they rehearse this. So I'm guessing that they take the whatever officials they have to whatever secure undisclosed locations they have to ride out these situations in one of Russia's many. I'm guessing one of Russia's many bomb shelters. They've been building bomb shelters in Russia for the last 70 or 80 years. Russian Air Force Ilyushin 262RA. Here's another one. 86561 taxiing at Moscow Chakalovsky Airport. So I guess this was a straggler. So funny that every week they're running these nuclear bug-out drills. Here they're talking about, again, intercepted. So we have another outlet talking about intercepted Russian radio communications where soldiers are describing frostbite, lack of supplies, and saying it's all FUBAR. Now I wonder if that translation is a Russian concept of FUBAR, because obviously in American terms, you know, FUBAR is fucked up beyond all recognition, very commonly used in the military. I'm just wondering what the phrase translates to in Russian. I imagine they don't say FUBAR. So I'm just curious what the Russian version of FUBAR is. So this is reporting coming out of the Pentagon.
Алло. Викторович, приветствую. Добро. Короче, наша...
As there's no translation, it's not really helpful to play that. Guys bitching about their conditions in Russian. Let's see if this is any better.
Алло.
Yeah, here we go.
Викторович,
Translation.
приветствую. Добро. Короче, здесь пиздец, я тебе скажу так, просто прощения за откровенность. Но недавно, смотри, что. Но вчера грады, кстати, отработали. Не знаю, походу, мы спрашивают наши, никто ничего не может сказать. Наша колонна осталась, другая поехала, расхерачили ее, град опять же накрыл. Я скажу так, обморожение ног у 50% личного состава. Здесь, я тебе скажу, здесь 200...
So, to me, it sounds like a phone call between a Russian soldier at the front and a friend in a rear area, maybe back in Russia. This is the context here.
Их отправить не могли нормально, они с нами дней 5 катались. Я представляю. Мы приехали, здесь мороз. Ну, как бы мы вообще ехали с условием того, что у нас было 4 палатки М-30. У нас одна палатка. Буржуйки никакой не оставили. Короче, вообще писец. И то эта палатка не для нас. Вон, мы вырыли окопы, мы в окопах живем, блядь. Это Николаева, что ли? Да. А где ваши эти офицеры? Кто у вас сейчас там рулит валит? Здесь Рязанцев рулит. Приехали, мы его первый раз увидели, он говорит, это было на 4-й день. Он нам, знаешь, что сказал? Ни для кого не секрет, что до конца операции остались считанные часы. И вот они, эти часы, до сих пор идут к нему. Ребята подходят, у кого за место бронепластины обычный этот экран кевларовый. там, товарищ генерал, этот, блин, вот у меня
Comrade
такая
General,
ситуация. Он
look
говорит,
at this. We have no armor
сынок,
plates.
крепись, крепись,
Steel
ебал.
yourself, son.
Он говорит, у меня, блядь, бронежилета нет. Сынок, крепись.
But sir, I don't have armor plates. I've just got the Kevlar, the carrier.
Намного было, хоть ясно было. Тут такой трэш. Я говорю, нас свой самолет авиабомбы скинул.
Friendly fire. They got
Ну, это
bombed by their own
нормально.
plane.
Охеренно, ебать. С добрым утром было, блядь. Не знаю, блядь. Дурдом нахер. Это спецоперация, блядь, с учетом того, чтобы дома не разрушать. Это все, да это бред, блядь.
All right, so, you know, soldiers being soldiers, they'll, I mean, I'm guessing if you went 2,000 years ago into the Russian the Roman army, if, you know, writing letters back home, I'm sure they wrote the same things, you know, complaining about their conditions. So, the Pentagon basically saying that they're experiencing food and fuels challenges, soldiers suffering from frostbite due to lack of cold weather gear, and severe communications issues. Without communications, it's hard to get things like logistics and sustainment. Now here, this is interesting. Now, this is, apparently Dmitry Medvedev doesn't like that the Poles are talking with, like, the Baltic states and Romania. At least some people in Poland are talking about forming some sort of alliance. This seems to have pissed off Putin's number 2, Dmitry Medvedev, and he wrote a threatening letter. I'm going to read to you this letter, and it just reads to me kind of like a mafia kind of extortion threat. It doesn't come right out and say that he's threatening them, but it's kind of like an implied threat. Morawiecki, Kaczynski, and Czech Slovenian PM trip to Kyiv was like Lenin's trip in a German-funded armored train. So those 3 guys, they actually flew into Kyiv to meet with Zelensky. And they promised Zelensky friendship, but lied, of course. Poland, and he's shit-talking Poland here, Medvedev. Poland suffers from long-term pathological Russophobia and does not mind its cost if the shed burned down and let the house burn down too. Poland and Polish propaganda, the most vicious, vulgar, and shrill critic of Russia, community of political idiots. Poland forgets Soviet army liberated it from Nazi occupation. Instead, Soviet occupation is equated with Nazism. This is a deceitful and disgusting rhetoric. Yet there are no anti-Polish sentiments in Russia. Quite the opposite. Russians have reacted with an outburst of sympathy and compassion to Kaczynski's plane crash in Smolensk, and Russia declared a day of mourning to honor the victims. Later, during my visits to Poland, I, Medvedev, became convinced that Russia and Poland face no obstacles to improving relations. However, Poland's elites, led by Kaczynski, controlled by the American masters, did everything to block the path to normalization. The interests of the citizens of Poland have been sacrificed due to Russophobia of mediocre politicians and their puppeteers from across the ocean, with clear signs of senile insanity. Is he talking about Biden there? Poland's decision to abandon the purchase of Russian gas, oil, and coal, and the opposition to Nord Stream 2 have already caused serious damage to the economy of this country. Now, it will only get worse. But now it is much more important for the vassal Polish elites to swear allegiance to their overlords, the United States, than to help their own citizens. So they will constantly fan the fire of hatred for the enemy, Russia. Economic cooperation with Russia is beneficial for the Poles. Human ties are indispensable, and cultural and scientific exchange between the birthplaces of Pushkin and Mikołajs, Tchaikovsky and Chopin, Lomonosov and Copernicus is vital. Medvedev's grand finale, and most likely Poles will make the right choice. It's like, I know you're going to make the right choice, eh, Poles? To cooperate with Russia on their own, without prompting and pressure from overseas elites suffering from dementia. I don't know. I'll tell you the energy I get from reading that letter. It's from this episode of Sopranos, where Patsy and Bert, you know, they try to, you know, they're the low-level guys in the outfit, and they got to earn. So they try to muscle in this, like, Starbucks-like restaurant and try to run a protection racket on them.
Manager Dale. Welcome to the neighborhood. We're from the North Ward Merchants Protective Cooperative.
I'm kind of busy. You guys looking for a donation?
Let him finish. You may have noticed, not to denigrate anyone, but this is a transitional neighborhood. I mean, demographically speaking, you still have a lot of marginal types.
And we merchants have found you really should have some round-the-clock security here.
Isn't that what the police are for?
They do their best, but they got their hands full. Your weekly dues to us will give you all the supplemental safety net you'll ever need.
I can't authorize anything like that. It'd have to go through corporate in Seattle.
We merchants prefer to deal on a personal, one-on-one basis.
I don't have any discretionary funds. It's got to go through corporate.
How do you think corporate would feel if, for the sake of argument, someone threw a brick through your window?
It'd be a shame if somebody threw a brick through your window.
Got like 10,000 stores in North America. I don't think they feel anything.
What if, God forbid, it wasn't just vandalism? What if an employee, even the managers say, was assaulted?
It'd be a shame if an employee were to be assaulted, you know? That's the energy I get from the Medvedev letter anyway. So as you can imagine, Poland didn't take too well to this letter. And it looks like they decided to tell the Russian diplomats to get the fuck out. And are expelling about 45 of them, accusing them of espionage. And spotted yesterday at the Russian embassy in Warsaw, fire, smoke coming out of the chimneys of the Russian embassy in Warsaw. Suddenly, the Russians are burning the documents, as it looks like Poland is getting ready to throw them all out. Breaking: 40 Russian diplomats will be kicked out of Poland for espionage. Russian ambassador was summoned to the Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs this morning. So he got that summons, and the documents started to get burned at the embassy. So that's all, folks. I mean, I've caught you up on the war. That's most of the news today that I'm aware of. I hope I've informed you guys. We're coming up now on 3 hours of me yakking. And I'm sure we'll have another 3 hours tomorrow in this wonderful, crazy world that a year into Biden. Food shortages, and well, just in time. In about a minute, Tim's going to come on, and I'm sure he's going to tell us all about the wonderful Biden breadlines. So that's all for this NeoUnrealist. If you want to help the channel, do me a favor. Hit like for this video. Leave a comment below. Mash down that subscribe button if you're not already subbed to the channel. You know how Susan Wiki rolls. She may give you the notifications, she may not, but if you want them, put it on the all setting on the that notification bell. Keep up with new content. If you want to contribute directly to the channel, you can toss your hard-earned dollars into the tip jar. You follow the links in the description below this video. You go to Patreon, Subscribestar, PayPal, and if you watch this on BitChute when it uploads there later, you can also click on the green tip pledge button on the video player itself. And most importantly, guys, thank you for watching.